September of 1919. Now, blacks have come back from serving in World War I. And by the way, the first heroes of World War I were black soldiers. And if you go into the run-up to World War I, blacks actually said, we want to fight. We want to become part of the military.
One of the highest honors that any man can have is to be able to say that once upon a time I was a soldier and I fought for our liberties, our justice. I legitimately fought for our country.
Before this, the Army said blacks couldn't have weapons. They could only serve as providing, support, that sort of thing, because they didn't want African Americans to have access to weapons. Okay, leaders of blacks at this time said, if we fight in World War I, we can show ourselves to be good citizens of America, and you'll have to give us our rights. And their promise was actually made by Wilson is, yes, you fight, you come back, and we'll remake America. They come back. They're proud. They have fought in World War I, and they have been promised that it's going to be a new era.
So these soldiers came home, and before they left, they were considered heroes. Do you know what they called an African-American captain or lieutenant or sergeant or corporal or even a private? Do you know what they called them? Nigger is what they called them. And they had to understand very quickly that while they may have been heroes overseas, once they came home, they were niggers.
We don't want to see you in this uniform. Take it off. But because of this experience, the African-American community, black community was saying, we're not going to take this anymore. Things were supposed to have changed. And by the way, it's not just in the South. There's in Chicago, it's all over the country. And so you start getting this fighting throughout, lynchings go up. You know how many lynchings there are in 1919? And not only are there lynchings, the lynchings become these public spectacles of sadism, where they're going to announce, in the South sometimes they announce the lynching, they let out schools for the lynching. There's even public burnings. There's postcards taken. So the country is coming apart. This utterly dark, horrible thing is coming forward in a way that it's the worst, ever since the Civil War.
Throughout 1919, there were 10 major episodes of what I think is best called anti-black collective violence.
Here's the thing. If we really want to understand this history and where it should be in our place, it's not an aberration that happened along the Mississippi River in the Deep South. This was very much a microcosm of a national tragedy, a national shame, a national attitude that was happening, a national battle that was happening.
We typically call these episodes race riots, but it's a misleading term because when we hear the word riot, we think, well, anyone participating is equally to blame, right? And we think that it's mayhem with people acting wildly, not having good impulse control, seeing an opportunity to break the law and doing it.
Even in the papers at this time, this sort of amazement, oh, the blacks are fighting back now. Because they had been cowed because of the lynchings were a way to have extrajudicial terrorism, okay? You didn't even have it. Whites could kill blacks with impunity, is really what was going on, and that was a way to, especially in the South, but to keep this power structure in place. And this was a rebellion, a national rebellion against them.
Let's take Chicago for an example. After an incident involving the stoning of a young black man who's on a raft in Lake Michigan by a white man, you have conflict between blacks and whites break out. That conflict was driven largely by white ethnic gangs who saw an opportunity to drive African Americans out of all white, mostly Irish American neighborhoods. Blacks have been moving into these neighborhoods because the place they were expected to live, required to live by practice, and in some cases, real estate practices and the law, was bursting at the seams, the so-called Black Belt. So African Americans were moving into white neighborhoods, and gangs attacked just Black occupied homes during Chicago's so-called riot to drive them out. We've got photographs of children dancing and cheering in these looted homes, smiling as they're lit on fire. The homes right next to those looted places are just fine. That's not a riot, that's ethnic cleansing. That's a calculated move to use mass violence to intimidate, hurt, punish, and set an example.
From going back from 1865, there was this period of Reconstruction where you actually had people elected to office in the South and all this. But basically, they had been, their citizenship had been taken away from them. They weren't given their citizenship. And what did that mean? It meant no voting rights, no same school rights, no access to a criminal justice system that was fair. What else were they supposed to do? You can't just accept lynchings forever, can you?
I was asked by the National Episcopal Church to write the litany, which is the service when the Episcopal Church apologized for its role in slavery and related evils. And as I was writing this litany, I became reacquainted and familiar with a large number of writings that I had read before, but I hadn't focused on them in the same way that I would for the litany. And I came across this 70-page document written by African-American historian and anti-lynching advocate Ida B. Wells Barnett. And she had written this piece called the Arkansas Race Riot. And I read it, and I got very disturbed because I grew up in Drew County, Monticello County seat. I went to school in Monticello. I never heard about it in school. I never heard about it in church. I never heard it in family. I never heard it in cafes or restaurants. And yet, here I am writing this piece for the Episcopal Church, and I find out about this. And I decided this is something I really should spend more time on. And because it happened so close to me. And then during the course of my research, I discovered that my maternal grandfather had actually participated in the massacre.
Well, you get a man named Robert Hill. He served in World War I. He comes back, and he decides to start organizing a union of sharecroppers. So what is sharecropping?
So sharecropping was a system that developed after the Civil War as a kind of compromise between the newly freed men and women, the former slaves, and their landowners.
Someone that's on the land, you go out and you plant and you raise the crop on that land.
Sharecropping was set up so that the freedmen would have an ownership actually in the crop. They wouldn't just be paid laborers. The idea was the crop would be shared. So the whites get their land back by and large, but they're going to be the landowners. But sharecropping, it has a bad sort of historical term to it. It wasn't meant that way. It was meant that they would share the crop, so they would share the profits in that, okay? They wouldn't be just wage earners or whatever it might be.
It really wasn't a partnership, it was a form of exploitation. So a lot of sharecroppers were signing contracts they couldn't read, or if they were literate, that they didn't well understand. And the contracts were written in a way to give just about every advantage to the landowner. So not just was 50% typically of the crops produced turned over, but the tenant, the sharecropper, agreed to compensate the landowner for seeds, for supplies, for tools, which had to be bought from the landowner himself or from a store that landowners put together.
The owner of the land would come out with his bill and tell you the seeds cost X amount of dollars, you ate this much food, and you have X number of income remaining after they take away the expenses.
The purpose was to admire sharecroppers in debt, to say each year, you know, you produced a good crop, and if it was just about taking 50%, this is what you would get back. But look, you owe me money for these tools, these seeds. Sharecroppers were often told, this is the price I got. But the landowners lied to them, and they had no way to verify that the price they were being told was the sale price, was in fact not it.
The person who was determining what those expenses are and how much they were was not the person who was doing the farming. It was a person who owned the land that you were sharecropping. You're doing all the work for. So they were making a determination of what your expenses were. And at the time, if this person was not an honorable individual, was not a fair-minded person, he could give you any number. And you had no recourse to say that number was incorrect.
We can call it sharecropping, but we should also call it debt peonage, because debt was used as a way to keep these citizens of the United States in a status very similar to the peons of feudal Europe.
My mother was born in 1924. So when she went to Chicago, it had to be, I was 6 years old when I came to Chicago. So it had to be at least 2 years prior to that. My mother got on welfare. She was on, they called it relief then, on relief. And which my grandmother said, you'd rather be on relief than to come back to Arkansas. My mother said, there's nothing in Arkansas for me, nothing at all. There are no jobs, no opportunities, nothing. And yes, I'll be on relief until I can do better, which she did. Now the activism came, and I don't think she was really, she had that feel of activism because of my mother's grandmother, Sally Giles, who was the mother of one of the Arkansas 12, Albert Giles, and Milligan Giles, who was also sentenced to prison, but on second-degree murder. But Albert was sent to jail for first-degree murder and conspiracy to cause this, quote, riot. That's the Elaine race massacre. My great-grandmother's home was used as a meeting place when they were, the sharecroppers were forming the Household Farmers Workers Union, if I'm not mistaken. It was a meeting place. So it was because it was centrally kind of located. And so just for her to even hold a woman to hold meetings in her home, that was a big thing. She spoke factually. She didn't mince words. She was very outspoken. So in that respect, I think that's where my mother got her sense of activism.
We're 56 years from the Civil War. Gideon Pillow had land in Phillips County and Lee County. Nathan Bedford Forrest started the community of Forest City, St. Francis County. The Confederacy was still there even though the war ended. There was more slaves in Phillips County than anywhere in Arkansas. The Civil War had one of the bloodiest battles in the state right here in Helena. And you got the first generation of Civil War descendants that you're working for.
And obviously, people in Phillips County were sensitized to what was happening elsewhere, and sensitized to Russian Revolution, sensitized to these people coming back, because there were a lot of people who had also been veterans.
Whether or not Hill was a veteran, it's pretty clear that he'd absorbed all of the rhetoric of the World War I era. And if you look at his statements, he's really trying to take this idea that President Wilson had put forward, that we need to make the world safe for democracy, and democracy is about equality, guarantee of rights, and equality of opportunity, and saying we need to have this here in the Delta for sharecroppers if this is to be a real thing, democracy at home. So he forms the Progressive Farmers and Household Union of America.
It was economic. I mean, there was white planters were concerned about the blacks' desire to get a larger piece of the pie, and that cotton prices had just, because of the war, had gone through the roof. African Americans wanted to take advantage of that, and they had been given some of a shaft in terms of the pricing.
And they hire a white attorney, a guy named Ulysses S. Branton, who is based in Little Rock. And he agrees to represent them. And his plan is, you'll get, when the crops come in, we'll ask the planters for a fair settlement. And if they don't provide it, we'll sue them in court. This just had not been done. And as news of the formation of the union spreads across the Delta and the hiring of an attorney, that's when many local leaders, planters, people in political power, the sheriff, and an important businessman named Mort Allen, they begin to organize an effort to disrupt the union.
The reason that people are upset, they were upset then just like they're upset now, it's not hatred, it's fear. If you see a wild animal in your backyard, you don't hate that wild animal, but you probably kill that wild animal because you're afraid of it. We were the farmers. They forced us to become the farmers. We had to till the land. We had to understand the soil. We had to understand the moons, the seasons, and how to make crops work in different environments, and they knew that. So if we had an opportunity to really maximize our potential within those parameters, it would have changed our economic destiny.
You know, stories were told, of course, at the time that were, a white telling of this story. And there hadn't been enough of an effort to. So when I got to this story, there was a lot of this talk. Oh, the whites have a story, the blacks have a story, and we'll never reconcile the two. Okay, but actually, you can reconcile the two, because what happens is once you start isolating things in time and space, where you start saying, okay, here's the white view of this thing, and now here's the black view, but are there some whites in court testimony that actually will support the black story? And that's what you find.
On the night of September 30th, one of the lodges of the union that Hill had formed had called its members together to plan for the arrival of the attorney's son. So U.S. Bratton was sending his son Osir to collect affidavits from the sharecroppers and get the evidence needed to make a case in court that they were being cheated.
So this car comes down and parks, turns off its lights, right? With the two white guys, and they have with them a black person.
There's no light at this time. It's dark. I mean, they're in a one-room wooden building, and other than candlelight or flashlights, they don't have any other light. So it's hard to know what's going on or who's there.
And they have guards out front, okay? Because they're worried about being attacked.
Shots were fired, we don't know by whom. One of the white men, who was a special deputy for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, had ordered the black guards he saw to get away from there. In the shooting, the special deputy for the Missouri Pacific Railroad is killed, and the other man is wounded.
The description is of a lot of fire, okay, coming in, and people running out the back. And they had been warned, you're not going to meet. Do not meet. You're not going to have, there was a threatened lynching if they met. But they went ahead and met. So now they were doing something, and as much as anything, it's not just that they're going to sue the plantation owners. The whole order is being threatened. They're not doing what they're told. They're not cowering before the threats.
white plantation owner, said if we paid black people what they actually earned, they'd own half of the Delta. We can't, so this idea that we have to cheat them to stay in control was the primary goal. I mean, that's how white supremacy works.
When Emmett Till was killed, I was 7 years old. I had just turned 7 in July, and he was killed in August. I think it was a month later that he was killed. So I was 7 in a month. And I was always the type of child that kind of be on the fringes of adult conversation. So there were things that I knew but didn't understand. I knew that someone in my family was sentenced to the electric chair, but I didn't know who. I knew that when Emmett Till was killed, that I recall actually looking at my skin color and said, you can be killed because of your skin color. My mother went to view his body. And when she got home, she just, with the 4 children, there's 5 of us, but one was a baby, she just collapsed in our arms, just weeping and sobbing about, what she saw. Not describing what she saw, but how it just wrenched, at her heart, what she saw. Now, my mother became an activist. I think she actively became an activist. I watched things about what was going on. She always had the news on. So after Emmett Till, the next thing I really noticed was the integration of, or tried the integration of school in Little Rock with the Little Rock 9. Seeing those children be spit on and everything by white, and I was like, well, we don't go to school with white kids here, and this is the North. I know none of my schools were integrated. I remember in 7th grade, a white girl was in my classroom. It was the first white girl, and she and I became friends. I take it that she was, because she had somewhat of a Southern accent, was from Appalachia. There was a lot of Appalachian whites living in poor areas in Chicago. And we were friends, and all of a sudden, I think one day she took me home with her. I didn't go inside the house. But the following day, I remember her saying to me, I can't be friends with you anymore because you're a nigger.
My mother and I, when I was 13, driving back and forth from Monticello to Little Rock, we used to talk about race issues quite a bit because of the Little Rock Central, and Little Rock Central was only 3 blocks from where my grandparents lived. So, when we would go, it was, there was a lot of stuff to talk about, but it all centered around race. And my mother, during those trips, would talk about on occasion that Lonnie had participated in what she called a well-known race riot. And she described what he had talked about in terms of the topography of the land, and that there were a lot of African Americans who were killed in Southeast Arkansas at this event, and that so many of the deaths occurred close to the cotton fields or within cotton fields, and that the railroad tracks ran right alongside the cotton fields and all of that stuff. And then as I did my further research, and when I visited the killing fields in Elaine, I really realized the place that Mother had been describing, where my grandfather participated, which was only north of McGee, from DeShay County into Phillips County, that what she was describing is what happened in the Elaine race massacre.
When whites come by in the posses the next morning, and the church is all shot up, okay? The whole community there outside of Hoopspur is worried.
They know full well what's coming. This is not the end of it. As word of that white deputy's death spreads,
if you had gone there to intimidate people, right? You thought this was going to be routine night riding stuff. You know, Klan rides up, scares people, burns cars, and the people stop doing whatever you see as undesirable. The problem with this event is white people end up dead. So when they go back to town with these dead white people, they got to have a story. And the story is these black people fired on us, and they all been storing up guns for years, and they plan on killing us all. And not only do they tell this to the local authorities, but the telegraph operator goes on the telegraph and begins sending this out to the neighboring communities. And this is how people in Mississippi and people in Tennessee and people in neighboring counties find out about the event, because the telegraph operator begins sending out this all bulletins alert. This alert also goes to Little Rock, and it gets to the governor. And the governor reaches out to both senators. They reach out to the War Department. The War Department pledges 500 troops to be sent down to quell this rebellion. There wasn't a rebellion. The first posse to come out to the scene didn't engage them. There was 2 or 3 white men who had come from Helena and drove out. They realized, man, there's a lot of Union members and they all got guns now. They drive back to Helena and they go to the courthouse right where we're at right now.
And the sheriff at the time, Frank Kitchens, sets up a special headquarters to form and deputize posses.
So they get the American Legion to join them. And 75 men from the American Legion are called in, and they are deputized in the courthouse. They empty the armory at the sheriff's department.
And they fan out across the cane brakes, they fan out across the area, and they look for these sharecroppers. They want to arrest all those who had been at the meeting. And so the mission becomes, we've got to bring to justice, arrest and convict and put to death those African Americans responsible for those men's death. Even if we can't figure out who that is, someone is going to pay for that.
Then all of a sudden, shortly in the morning, a young black man starts running along this road out of Hoop Spur, okay? And he goes to the Giles house and says, they're shooting blacks. They're shooting everybody in their path. And now what happens is at this moment, they're not fighting back, okay? They're hiding now, okay? And the men from that house around Giles, they go into this Govan slough to hide. And the whites, they go down on both sides of that slough and they start shooting in from both sides, okay? And one of the guys, Smitty, his name is, he testifies, yeah, I went down there and I shot this guy in the head. His name, and it was Milliken Giles. It's actually the descendant ancestor of she the Walker. And there was cries that, hey, we got to stop because they're on the opposite sides of the slough. We're shooting our own men. So there's some sense that what happened was, bullet crosses, but now there's a white guy dead. So a second white guy dead because we had one from the night before. So what happens at this moment that does this cry going out that like, oh, the blacks are shooting back at us? There's 3 waves of killing, okay? First, you have the posses that are organized out of Helena, okay? These guys are plantation owners. Do they really want to shoot up all the sharecroppers? Well, what happens is the word has gone out that there's this uprising of blacks in Phillips County, which everybody's been afraid of, and now posses start coming in. Now, the posses that come in across the Mississippi from other parts, they don't have any real connection to the blacks that are living in this area, okay? They're not working for them. Early in the morning of that second morning, there is a posse that goes out. They go up the road from Ellen and they make their first left turn to the west. First thing they do is kill a woman. They just go, there's an old woman who apparently came on her porch and said, get out of here, they kill her. And she's lying on the dirt in front of her. You have a newspaper reporter riding with one of the posses. And he talks about him just coming down the road there and just shooting blacks further up, closer to Helena, that are still out in the fields not aware of this, just shooting them left and right. So most of the killings is attributed to these posses that come on that first day. The troops arrive,
By train a day or two after the initial incident.
and the way they come at this time, they come in from a railroad that brings you in from the south up through Elaine.
The troops arrive believing this myth, this lie about a black conspiracy. At this time, the population of Phillips County is about 75% black, so whites are in the minority. So the all-white troops come in thinking blacks have organized this massive killing spree, and it's their job to save white residents.
Now, what do you see in the documents, the military documents, about the organization of those troops? First of all, when the law of the land at this time was, you weren't supposed to be able to bring in troops. You were supposed to put it down with local troops and that, your own guard. And so, for example, this is why, based on that, this is why federal troops didn't come in and stop lynchings, because the local people were supposed to do it. But now it was different. Whites were seen as under attack. The governor gets on the phone. He gets the authorization to send in the military.
So they come in and they fan out, and they're looking for African Americans still at large, those who haven't been arrested by the posses and put in jail. And in some instances, African Americans who are in the countryside see these troops and they think they've come to protect them. And they come out and they're killed.
They go further into, out of the fields into the cane breaks where people are hiding, and they turn north. And there are reports, white reports, of the military moving through there and shooting them down like, quote, rabbits with machine guns, just marching through the cane breaks until they say they've cleared those cane breaks. But this is a white account. This isn't a black account, it's a white account, a military account. And then they report there's a lot of gunfire, there's a lot of machine gun fire. I'm convinced the bulk of the killing was done by the military.
What was normal for the time was to bring these troops in to restore order. It is not normal for them to be used to kill U.S. citizens, but that's what happened in Phillips County.
Walter White, who led the NAACP for a quarter of a century, and he goes down to Helena, or to Phillips County, and he panics. He thinks that, he could be lynched, and he panicked. And so he got on a train to make it to Mississippi. And it was just, across the river. And he says that was the longest trip that he had ever taken in his life, was getting away from Phillips County, Arkansas, into Mississippi. It gives you a sense of how, there are others, it was called American Congo at one point because of the way in which blacks were treated in southeast Arkansas. People called it, the heart of darkness. So it had, it was a tough place for African Americans at that time.
They then round up all the blacks, okay? Everybody, like, 700 or 800, something like that. And they bring them to Elaine, and they set up a process for deciding whether they were gonna take them to jail or allow them to go back to work to pick cotton. Now remember, the cotton, this is the first days of October, you've got a cotton field you want picked.
And the plantation owners would go to the jail and collect the people who were good Negroes, have them come with them, and then they, tell them, bring them back to the farms, put them back to work. And all the people who were union members, they just kept in the prison, in the stockade.
When they first bring the blacks to the jail, okay, a lynch mob does form outside the jail. Like to storm the jail, and this was something that happened at this time. They would storm the jail, grab them in a few places. And the town authorities didn't want that sort of, they needed black laborers and all, and they didn't want this reputation to sully Helena, that a lynch mob broke into a jail. So they promised the lynch mob, don't worry, we'll convict them at trial. They're going to torture witnesses. They're going to whip them. They're going to put them in an electric chair and turn up the volume until they agree to, which is blacks, to testify against the union leaders.
They raped their wives. They use really heinous tactics to try to break this union, intimidate other sharecroppers in the community.
The jury would go in and be back in within minutes and say, yeah, this guy's guilty. And so, of course, we gave them a hearing. They were represented. No witnesses were called on their behalf. Of course, witnesses. But that's not what's the story. The story was they got a trial. And when it went to the... and by the way, so once this happens, you have all these other people then agreeing to plead to second-degree murder because they don't want to go to the electric chair.
But 12 African-American men were charged with very serious offenses, capital offenses, for the deaths of the 4 or 5 white men killed in the race massacre. Remember, we're talking about 237 African-Americans, men, women, and children killed, and a total of 5 whites. So it's pretty lopsided, but it's African-Americans who are being charged with the deaths of those 5 whites during the actions of the posse and the roundup of African-Americans.
You look at the 60s, and again, I'm gonna move forward to the point where I started to go in school, Elaine. We still went to school on the back of the bus. We had a special session of bus we had to ride. I mean, this was in the like 68, 69 time frame. In Elaine, there was a movie theater. We had to go in a certain door. We couldn't sit in the same areas as our white counterpart. When I went and bought a milkshake from the Dairy Queen, I could not go to the same window and order my milkshake or hamburger as my white counterpart who may have been in the same class I was in school. So, no, justice was not blind back then. And I mean, I know we say it's not even blind today, but in Elaine, Arkansas, and racism was everywhere. That you live with that. I mean, the N-word, you get used to that. I mean, people drive by your house and call you the N-word like nothing, you know. So no, justice was not equal under the law in those days. My cousin, he just whistled at this lady, Woody Dart's daughter. Woody Dart was the guy who owned the store just south of our farm there in Snow Lake that sold goods. And he was a pretty decent guy, because had not been for him, some of the KKK members, we knew who the KKK members were in Arkansas. I remember when Shelley Ball, that's what we call him, Shelley Ball, told Woody that we want to get that in and hang him. Woody Dart stepped in. He basically said, it's not gonna be any of that here. That's my daughter, and nobody gonna be hanging anybody. My point is that there was a group, Dart was a decent guy. So there were individuals, regardless of color, that was trying to reduce the temperature of things in that part of the country. But you guys remember, in the 60s, that was a difficult thing to do because of the environment we lived in. And so to say that they would get a fair trial in 1919 when this occurred, no way.
They are quickly convicted in trials that have little semblance of fairness. And the NAACP enters into the defense of those 12 men. And they eventually draw upon the services of a black attorney from Arkansas named Scipio Jones, who had independently undertaken an effort to defend those men and prevent the death sentences from being carried out first, and then hopefully getting the convictions overturned.
Scipio Africanus Jones was an African-American lawyer, and largely because of the work that he does in this case, he becomes the most well-known African-American lawyer of his time in the United States. His mother definitely was a slave. His father's parentage, his father was a white man who owned his mother. So he went to Shorter College. While he was at Shorter College, he part-timed as a sharecropper. So he'd go and work, people's farms while he was in college to make money. make ends meet. So he might have had a sympathy for these sharecroppers, having had a legacy of growing up, his family growing up slaves on a plantation, and then the legacy of him actually having to do that work to get through college.
There were two sets of appeals because of the trial procedure. So all 12 defendants went into court with inadequate representation, no chance to consult their attorneys beforehand. Some were being brought into court in chains. They had been tortured. They had been subjected to electrical shocks, formaldehyde thrust up their noses, and very severe beatings. And as one of the defendants put it, finally I confessed to stop the torture. So that becomes a factor in the cases. In the rush to judgment, the court made a mistake. The jury was not directed in the case of 6 defendants to specify the degree of murder they had been found guilty of. The judge sentenced them to death, and so the first appeal for those 6 defendants, known as Ware et al., after one of the defendants, Ware, W-A-R-E, that resulted in an overturning of the verdict because the Arkansas Supreme Court said to deliver a sentence on a verdict of murder in which no degree has been specified is so defective that it cannot stand. But that was a temporary reprieve because new trials were held and the same result achieved. And this time the jury said it's first-degree murder, and the judge again sentenced those 6 to death. The other 6 defendants had been found guilty of first-degree murder, so they were just waiting on appeals to happen. The statute of limitations didn't run out. Basically what happened is that through the persistent efforts of Scipio Jones, aided by the NAACP and the attorneys they had hired, new trials were obtained for 6 of the defendants, and a change of venue was obtained. Scipio Jones was really the heart of the defense, saying there's no due process here, and you don't have equal protection of the laws. They were not given an adequate opportunity under Arkansas law to contest the choice of jurors. In some cases, these men had been convicted by jurors who had been part of something known as the Committee of 7, who said, we've got to get convictions, put these people to death, and put down any further effort to see sharecroppers trying to assert equality or make any sort of advancement. So the jury was corrupt from the get-go. So that offers a thread of hope. When that reaches the Supreme Court in 1923, in a 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court rules that state judicial proceedings must ensure due process and equal protection. This itself doesn't free all those defendants, but the state decides to abandon prosecution of 6 of the defendants. They keep asking for a stay because they don't want to try these cases outside of Elaine in a new venue because they might not get the verdict they want. So those 6 defendants were held for over a year without trial, and that's when they were released because that was a flagrant violation of their constitutional rights. The other 6 were eventually released by 1925. They were never pardoned, but the governor at the time, Thomas McRae, on his last day in office, signed undated furloughs for them, in effect making them free. But that's no vindication for them, right? I mean, they had suffered torture, they'd been imprisoned for years, and in the end, the governor, who doesn't want political blowback or doesn't want to sully his reputation by pardoning these men, quietly does it with the undated furlough.
What he does that is brilliant is he figures out how to use this due process clause of the 14th Amendment for the first time. And if you know anything about that, that will become really the cornerstone of all of the civil rights disputes that come. Just about all of the ones that come after it will be based on this due process and this notion that blacks have to be treated in the courthouse, in the courtroom, and public venues the same way as whites. You can't torture blacks to elicit a confession. And he will save them a number of times from, I mean, they'll be within days of being executed. And he thinks of very creative ways to get them out of the executions. Most noted was to move the case to Chancery Court. And by getting it in Chancery Court, he gets a writ of habeas corpus where they have to present them at the court, and he have to have a stay of execution. And he saves them with the stay of execution. So he does some brilliant strategy, something that a white man would have been praised for at the day, but a black man doing it would have been seen as, a phenomenal stance. So, I mean, he's able to build a national reputation by his skillfulness as an attorney. And he's buried right here in the city. And unfortunately, you would assume that they'd have some huge monument to, one of the nation's greatest black lawyers. But no, it's just a regular, back of the cemetery.
My name is Chris Ritchie. I am the state representative of the Arkansas House of Representatives for District 12, which includes all of Phillips County. And I'll be the MC today, and so it is my honor to welcome you here this afternoon to the dedication ceremony for the Elaine Massacre Memorial. Today is a day of remembrance. It is a remembrance of the lives lost and the lives uprooted and destroyed by the horrific events that took place in Phillips County 100 years ago.
On dedicating the Elaine Massacre Memorial, they will end. All of them will end. Words to flare a conflagration. They will end. All of them will end. The plots setting hue against hue, yes, they will end. But time and the river shall never end, for they begin to begin again and over again, as time and the river wash through the land and over its dreams, schemes, and lauded and unlauded past. We've told our stories here, while others listened, thinking mainly of their own, of those who died killing, or of those who found no finding of an escape from onslaught upon onslaught. Now we gaze on the memorial, which tells of days that went unclaimed, which tells things 100 years of the Elaine race massacre did not care to hear, that all history is a struggle between what we must end and what we must begin. As time and the river ever flow between now and then, and delay for neither those we honor here nor those who have or will come here. Of time and the river, beckoning no escape, leaves no choice. So we shall no longer wait for more light that we may better see light, nor wait for other dreams that we may better inspire dreams.
100 years ago, on September the 30th of 1919, on this block, Phillips County civic, political, and economic leaders settled into one night at the Helena Opera House, which used to stand on this block. 100 years ago, on the same night, 3 men met at the Phillips County Courthouse and drove down to Hoopspur Church. They went to Hoopspur Church to check on a meeting of black sharecroppers who were attempting to unionize. And those people were unionizing so that they could be paid fairly. The 3 men who left from that courthouse across the street from this block. While the black sharecroppers fought for fair pay, the black business class in Helena built movie theaters and cathedrals. They owned rental property. They ran small businesses. They practiced medicine on Walnut Street, which runs on the west side of this block. While the black business class ran their businesses on Walnut Street, the white business class owned banks, movie theaters, restaurants, and retail stores on Cherry Street, which is that street that runs on the east side of this block. Two sides of this block. And although there was a wide divide between the black and white business classes, there was an even greater divide between the black business class and the black sharecroppers meeting in Hoop Spur that night. The 30 miles that separated this block and Walnut Street from Hoop Spur might as well have been a million miles, because there was nothing holding together the black business class and the sharecroppers meeting in Hoop Spur that night, except for shared history and black skin. But what neither group could have imagined happened 100 years ago. The three men who left the courthouse across the street from this block fired shots into the Hoop Spur church. Shots were fired out of the church, and a white man was killed. A posse formed in that courthouse across the street from this block, and mob violence ensued. When the dust settled, 5 white men were killed, and more than 100 black people were killed. Estimates have gone as much as 800, but most historians have settled on about 200, and the mob raged on. More than 100 black people were arrested and brought to the Phillips County Jail across the street from this block. Those men were brutally beaten and tortured in that jail across the street from this block. And the mob gathered right here on this block, right where you sit. The mob gathered and chanted and screamed for death. And 12 men were given sham trials in that courthouse across the street from this block and sentenced to die across the street from this block.
Hello, everyone. First, let me want to bring on the our panelists. I'm Kwame Abdul-Bey, the co-founder and co-convener of the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. And what our goal is tonight is to remember what happened in Elaine, Arkansas, in Phillips County, Arkansas, 101 years ago today. And the name of this program is called Remembering the Elaine Massacre, Virtual Voices of Healing. And this is a production of the Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919 in association with the Arkansas Peace and Justice Memorial Movement. So if you just give me a second so that I can pull up everybody. And Clarice is supposed to, she'll be here momentarily. And when she gets here, we'll do an opening ceremony. And once the opening ceremony is over, which will be about a minute or two, and then after that, we will go ahead and start our panel discussion. I want to apologize to everyone for us coming on late. We came on late because we originally intended to broadcast simulcast on Facebook Live on all of about 6 different Facebook Live pages. And for some reason, Facebook kept kicking us out. So what we had to do is we instead went live on YouTube and then put the links to the YouTube Live on our Facebook pages. So let me find Lisa and bring Lisa in because I want Lisa to be able to say hello to everyone. Lisa, are you there? Lisa, are you there?
Yes.
Yes. Lisa is the brains of this entire operation. I'm just a cog in the stream in the machine. But Lisa, while we're waiting on Clarice to come, because she's setting up the altar right now, would you please give us some perspective on what this day is about, why this is important, what made you create the Descendants of the Elaine Massacre, and what was your vision for this entire week? Because this is an entire week, and first of all, I want to thank you you're like a descendant 3 or 4-fold, right?
I think before it's all over with, everyone born, raised from Elaine is going to be connected in some way to multiple people. So, oh yeah. So, but yeah, my name is Lisa Hicks Gilbert. I'm born and raised. I always say Snow Lake, Rashaw, and Elaine, because it's just, and a lot of us, you got grandmama here and daddy here, and Elaine in the surrounding townships. And this, and I want to make sure I say this, and I've been saying this the last week, and maybe because of so much going on with trying to get all this together. Initially, this was going to be in Elaine, but because COVID has totally changed our lives and rearranged our lives, so I decided to do it virtual, and it was just going to be a day or two. And I don't know what, something kept pushing me, but let me go back a little bit. I created Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919 Facebook page simply to give descendants and Elaine and the surrounding townships a voice, in the capacity building work that was going on around the Elaine Massacre. That was it. Just give us a voice, because I felt our voice was being left out. And that multiple reasons because of that, a lot of people are still afraid to talk about it. A lot of people are still encouraged now not to talk about it. And then you have so many people who still don't know about it. I mean, I've only known about it for 12 years. So yeah, just making sure that descendants have a voice and we tell our own stories. There are so many wonderful, and I use the word wonderful because, and that might seem, because this is not a wonderful, thing that happened, but the stories are wonderful because they give a different perspective of the massacre. It puts the human in something that was so inhumane, and just a lot of stories about the women, the wives, and what happened to them, and so just making sure that the descendants have a voice in this, and that anyone who feels they speak for us, they let me say this for myself. You do not, the way that I can, that we are very capable of speaking for ourselves. And I want to encourage and empower, all of my Elaine family and surrounding townships to find your voice and speak, to this movement.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right. And we have Clarice Abdul-Bey, who is also a descendant
Hi, everyone.
of the Elaine massacre. And I'm going to turn it over to you for the opening.
Well, my descendancy is through bloodline. Great-great-grandfather, born in the 1900s, sharecrop tenant farmer. My father and his family grew up in the Delta, Helena, Elaine, Tappan. And so, of course, there is this blood connection that I have, and this reverence and honor that I have for Phillips County and Elaine. And so what I was doing in the other room was—
We saw you.
setting up this altar that was already set and making sure the camera was on it and everything. And what we want to do before we actually get into it, and I just want to thank everyone for being here. I give honor to the other descendants here today, and appreciate you spending this time talking about just us having a talk about Elaine and the massacre of 1919, and just kind of getting it all out. But what I did was what I like to do, and what I try to do before we get started, is give reverence to those ancestors who are no longer with us. And this altar is symbolic of that. It has candles, it has cotton on it. I don't know if you can see it. It has sunflowers that are real. And it has books about anti-racism. And these candles are a tier. And on the top layer is 12 candles, and that's for the Elaine 12. But surrounding it are other candles, and that is symbolic of the lives that were lost.
The 122.
Right. And so
wrongfully convicted defendants.
Right. And so that's what that symbology is. And I just want us to give reverence. Take about 30 seconds of silence, but in your silence, you can do whatever you like to do. However you want to make space, do that. Whether it's in a prayer, whether it's humming, or whether it's just welcoming in these ancestors. I believe that the energy of them still are here. I believe that's the reason why we do this work, some of us. And I believe, yes, Lisa.
Yes, are we going to bring everyone in before we do this?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to bring everyone in. We definitely want to, we definitely want to do that. And are they listening? Are we?
Yes.
Okay. It's just
once you finish this ceremony, we'll bring everybody
in. And we're just making space for the energy of healing. And that's what we're doing all week long, is talking and discussing. And in our discussion and in our conversations, we are making way for healing. So I just want to do that. And we're going to go ahead and bring everyone else in.
You don't want to do the 20 seconds first?
We're going to do 30 seconds. I added just a little bit more time because we need that.
For logistics, it'd be easier if we do that first.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Are you able to zoom in here?
No, we don't have a budget for that.
Okay.
What's the budget, Lisa?
Let's see.
Oh,
Okay.
Go ahead.
do we not?
All right. We are going to start. Thank you. We gave it a little bit more than 30 seconds, but what I want to make sure that throughout our conversations that we are paying attention to our breath. And if we feel like we're breathing shallow, to just take deep breaths, it's okay. However you want to do that. We definitely encourage breathing properly. And it just kind of helps us relax and calm ourselves through this conversation, very heavy conversation. Okay.
I'm bringing everyone in. Lisa, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you as I bring everyone in.
Yes.
You want me to? Okay. Hey, Sheila. Hey, Miss Sheila.
Hi.
Having to search for everybody's name.
Miss Sheila, I have a picture of you with my son from last year when
UALR?
you and Mr. Chester were receiving that award.
Bradley, and that's Candace. I think everyone's on. Miss Dorothy, Aura.
Let's see. George Gibson is the only one that I'm not seeing.
Okay, I don't know. I think he was having some problems early, but he might check in with us.
Okay. Well, we have.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Miss. I've heard so much about you. Hi, Candace, I've heard a lot about you also. Hi, Mr. Stephen and Dorothy.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Kwame, you wanted me to, now what I wanted to do, and I don't know if everyone was on here, I introduced myself, and I thought it would be, so much more personal. Everyone introduce themselves. And I wanted to start, if I can, I'm going to start with Miss Sheila. And Miss Sheila, please tell everyone, Miss Sheila, if you want to introduce yourself.
You're muted.
I'm Sheila Walker. I am a descendant of Albert and Milligan Giles. Milligan was sentenced to second-degree murder. Albert was one of the Arkansas 12. Yeah, as you all could see on that video, you saw the previous. If you saw the previous video, you could see my role as far as Elaine is concerned.
Okay. All right. Next,
and I'm in Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Tell everyone where you are.
In the hospital.
Oh, yes. No.
What?
Yeah. Out to us from the hospital.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was hoping my son, he said he was going to be on. So.
Well, we send you love and healing.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Aura, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello to all. My name is Aura Scaife. I'm a current Elaine resident, and I am also a descendant. I have no, how can I say this? Well, I don't know what words I want to express it in, but I'm going to say I'm a descendant of all lives that were lost because I too am Black. I currently live here in Elaine, and what else? Y'all gotta forgive me because I'm just getting off work and my kids are kind of still rowdy.
Okay, there'll be a lot
So,
more.
okay.
All right, and Candace, you gonna introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Candace Williams.
Candace.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Candace Williams. I'm a current resident of Lambrook, Arkansas, and that's, in that Elaine area. Born and raised there. My parents were as well, so we're definitely descendants.
And next we have Bradley.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Bradley. Everyone calls me Bradley. My great grandfather is Edward Coleman, one of the Elaine 12s also. I just come to stop by and say it's a joyous occasion when we all can get together via technology and see each other in the midst of a pandemic. Yeah. Bless and thank God for each and every one of you and the people who put the movie together. And I want to also send a special thanks out to Miss Lisa for keeping me in the loop and everyone else who assisted her. I'm grateful for each and every one of you to make sure that this legacy lives on and making sure that the voices of our ancestors are heard day in and day out. And it's a privilege and an honor to be here with you.
Thank you.
All right. And
Memphis, Tennessee. I'm sorry.
Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah, and I didn't say it earlier, but for everyone, I'm in Little Rock. Yeah, I'm in Little Rock.
You're in Sherwood.
Who?
We are.
Here. Okay. All right. And I don't see I don't know if Miss Dorothy is on or not.
I'm on, but I don't see my picture.
Either, Miss Dorothy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Did you hit the stop video? Hit the video thing up top? And you might have to go out into settings, but go ahead.
There it is.
There it is.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Miss Dorothy.
Hey, Miss Dorothy.
Hi, how are y'all? Electronics are great. My laptop crashed today, and I'm on my iPad. It's kind of small. But my name is Dorothy Roddy Neal. I live in Bryan, Arkansas. My grandfather, Joseph Knox, one of the Elaine 12, went to prison. His daughter, my mother, was 5 months old when the massacre took place. And her mother took her and her 2 sons and moved to a little town called Dixie, Arkansas.
Thank you.
All right. Now I'm gonna let you take over.
Okay. Well, what we want to do is, first of all, I give honor to being surrounded by all of these descendants. There's some powerful blood that's flowing through all of your veins. And I thank you for being here this evening. What we want to do tonight is we just want to have a discussion, a heartfelt discussion. You are willing to share what you want to share. And if you need, you get some Kleenex around you, because I know a lot of things that's going to be said tonight will require us to shed a couple of tears so that our mental health can continue to progress as we get off of this call once it's over. But the first thing that I want to do is I'm just going to throw out a question, and let's just go and let's just have talk, and we can talk to each other, amongst each other. We can, this is as if we were all sitting in the living room together on the couch. That's the type of conversation I want to have. I want to start off by just asking you guys, since everyone is a descendant, there was a moment in your lives where you learned about the Elaine race massacre. Do you mind sharing with us that moment? Anybody?
Well, I'm Aura speaking. I briefly, I was born and raised here in Elaine. I graduated from the Elaine High School in 2001. But I would honestly have to say that it wasn't until my freshman year, I I read a paragraph in one of our history books, and it wasn't even merely a paragraph. It just briefly just said something about the 1919 massacre. At the time, I really didn't give any more insight to it because, like I said, it didn't hold a great significance at the time. It wasn't until I was grown. I'm currently 37 years of age, and I would say that it was probably around the age of 32, 33 when I started really just
That's Miss
hearing
Brown.
about the massacre and what happened. And at the time when I first learned, can you guys hear me good?
Yes.
Yes, we can
At
hear
the time when I first learned about it, it wasn't, the details weren't as thorough as they have been over the past years. But what I did hear, there were stories that were told. They were saying that many Blacks didn't lose their lives. There were only maybe 8. But as time progressed and the years continued, and I asked more questions, I really couldn't get answers at the time because a lot of my elders, they really just didn't talk about it. And even with my parents, my dad is 73. He really just didn't really just speak on it because he was born in Marvel, but they lived here in Elaine throughout their lives as youth. And when he did speak on it, he wouldn't go into detail. And the same with my mom. She really just never talked about it because she said that there was a topic that they really didn't discuss. And when she spoke about how her mother, which was my grandmother, would, talk about it when they would ask questions, it was always, she would get to a point and she would just stop. She wouldn't say anything else. So as the years have continued to go, I've been learning about the trauma. And as an individual here in Elaine, I never realized how traumatized I was until I just really started studying everything that happened during the 1919 massacre. And I started learning, all of the many, many lives that were lost. And I would say it was within the last 2 years where I've learned pretty much everything that I've learned about the 1919 massacre. So as a youth,
You said within the last 2 years?
Within the last 2 years.
Wow.
And I can honestly say, I was born in Elaine. Actually, I was born in the Elaine clinic, born here in Elaine and raised in Elaine my whole life. And this was something that was never discussed, even at family events, when we have family gatherings, this was something that was never talked about. And even more so now, it's still not something that's, heavily discussed because, like I said, my parents are elderly, but they still hold that traumatic significance, in telling the details of that story. So, I mean, in the beginning, I used to get upset, but now, like I said, as I begin to learn better, I understand that it's not that they don't want to talk about it. It's just that traumatized fear that they still hold on to because there were many lives, innocent lives that were taken and that were lost, only because they wanted that fair treatment and they wanted the rights. So, yeah.
Yes. Wow.
Go
Yes,
ahead,
Miss
Sheila.
Thank you, Aura.
You don't have to raise your hand. Just jump on in.
Well, I learned about something happened from my grandmother, who was also involved with the Elaine massacre with both my great grandmother, Sally Giles Milligan, and Albert Giles. Albert was one of the Arkansas 12. I didn't know exactly what happened. She tried to tell me a story in 1973. My son, Marcus, was 2.5 years old. We'd taken a trip from New York City down to Hot Springs, Arkansas, where I was born. And she tried to tell me something happened when she was a girl. And in trying to tell the story, she got to a certain point of saying, I knew something was going to happen. I had a premonition, that something bad would happen. And they started shooting into the church. I rounded up some children and we jumped out the window, ran into the woods, and then she goes into hysterics. And throughout her life, she would get to that point and she would just become hysterical. It's not until after her death in 1991 that I asked my mother, what was she talking about? And my mother says, the Elaine riots. And I said, the Elaine riots? What do you mean, Elaine, like the name Elaine? She said, yeah, they say Elaine. So, okay. I looked it up once we got a computer. And then I found the white account of the Elaine riot, of the massacre. But what stood out to me was a name, the last name Giles, and Milligan, which was um, my grandmother's brother. Like Albert was her brother, and Milligan was her youngest brother. He was only 15 at the time of the massacre. I didn't know that name Milligan. I only knew him as Uncle Jim. So I called my mother back and asked her who was that. And in that white account, they said that they had gotten testimony from this 15-year-old. They didn't say he was 15, but I learned later on that he was 15, to say that, yes, they were involved in conspiring to kill the white landowners. I kind of put it aside. And periodically I would go back into the computer once we got a computer and look up to see if there were more articles. And then I saw that there was a book written by Griff Stockley. I read that. I found their names in the index of the book. I found some of the testimony and the accounts of this is the first trial. And like I said, I could periodically looked it up. And then with Robert Whitaker book, as you saw him on the video, I noticed that the descendants, the people that were involved in Elaine, were told to never speak about it. Mm-hmm. And that just stood out to me, that this is why this story has not been told. Once I had all that information, I had nothing to do with it. I got in touch with Robert Whitaker, and then he gave me all kind of research papers that he had done in research and writing his book. And he introduced me to J. Chester Johnson, who you saw on that video. And we just started comparing notes and talking about reconciliation through the Elaine, being descendants of the Elaine. And he was like the first white person to come forward and say, yeah, I would like to talk to someone that's on the other side. And there was a connection there. And through through all of that, I have met Lisa as last November, and I had met Aura in 2016. And I didn't know whether she was a descendant or not. I had been down to Elaine since 2015. My daughter-in-law, Marcus's wife, is still doing a documentary on the Elaine massacre. It's called Bound by Blood. It hasn't been released yet, but with interviews and hearing Aura speak, and then meeting Lisa and connecting with Lisa this past year. I guess, Lisa, was it earlier this year or something or other? I just knew that there was a force between Lisa Hicks Gilbert and Aura Truitt, two people in Elaine, that I felt that because I live in Wilmington, I don't have any direct connection to Elaine, but they're my direct avenue to, because I see a need in Elaine to empower the people of Elaine, to empower the descendants, as well as, and Lisa's, when I started talking to Lisa and Aura, our visions were the same. And it was just like a godsend. It's like God just said, here you go. You got all this information. This is what you do. You on this reconciliation with this white man and some white people and Judge Miller and everything. But here's someone that is directly involved with Elaine, involved with the Descendants. This is how you can help, and just to help empower them. Help with empowerment, that's all. So I am like, how would you say, the cheerleader,
All right.
cheering Lisa on.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you so much.
And Marcus is with us now, Sheila's son.
Yes.
Marcus, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us how you first heard about the Elaine massacre.
Yeah. Sorry that I joined late, and I'm sorry I'm not going to be able to stay too long, but I wanted to come in and introduce myself and say hello and thank you, Lisa, for getting this started. When I just saw the Facebook page a few weeks ago, like a week ago or so, and that this was happening, and it's just good that you're pulling people together and having a group like this come together. It's important, that we acknowledge our history, of course. But yeah, I'm here in Boston, and I didn't really know about the Elaine massacre until the early 2000s. I just knew my mom had told the story about my great grandmother Annie going into hysterics and knowing something traumatic happened in her childhood, but sadly, there's always too many traumatic things in our backgrounds, and I just kind of wrote it off as sadly just more trauma that my great grandmother experienced, not knowing at all it was connected to this huge historical event. So yeah, that's how I found out. I guess my mom had found the book. I think that Griff Stocky wrote first, or was it Bob Whitaker? Yeah, and then Bob Whitaker's book. And
can you see it?
From there, yeah.
Blood in their eyes.
Blood in their eyes.
And let me just say this: Marcus is a history teacher in Boston. He teaches high school students, so he puts a lot of that into the history. He's teaching Black and brown, Boston Public School, Black and brown students. The minorities are white students, but he's teaching them our history. Not only Black history, but American history, but he's infusing that the Elaine massacre into the history that he's teaching. So the word is getting out.
Good.
Yeah, trying, yeah.
Marcus.
And Sheila, I sit beside
Miss Dorothy.
I sit beside you and your son in Helena.
Yes, in Helena at the memorial, yes.
And last year in November,
yes,
I sit beside Lisa.
And you, we introduced, and I didn't get her number, and I didn't officially get Dorothy's number until we had the memorial for the markers for the Elaine 12.
Yes.
In Little Rock. That's where I met Lisa and Dorothy, but I really didn't get a chance to connect with Lisa because so much was going on that day, representing, and Stephen. I was in contact with Stephen before, I hadn't met him, but I met him last November up front and personal. Yes.
Yes, I made it. That's when I met him.
Miss Dorothy, since you are having a good chat and conversation that I'm really thoroughly enjoying, can you please talk to us about your first?
Just looking at everybody, I'm the oldest on here, and I have the less to say because I have never been to Elaine, Arkansas, but my prayer is I get there before I die, because that's what a history is.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, and as far back as I can remember, hearing about the story. Now, my grandmother was one you asked her about. She was in Elaine when all this took place. But when you asked her about it, she always said, "Let sleeping dogs lie." So it was no information from her. But I later learned that it was like 3 families that moved from Elaine when all the killing was going on. They just sort of kind of took my grandmother and her 3 children and just left. They just left. And just hearing from the other families who would talk about it, I've just heard about it all my life. And it's really ironic that I hear all these stories, but I want to go to Elaine so I could feel it in my heart, in my soul, because that's where I came from, even though I wasn't born yet.
Let me know when you want to go.
Yes, let's do a road trip.
Oh, okay. Okay, really, Lisa?
Yes.
It will be totally eye-opening because I don't know if there are other parts.
Don't
If
say
there
that
are
too
other
loud,
parts.
because I'm retired. I can go whenever.
Yeah, it will be totally eye-opening because I don't know if parts of America
Can't go with
that. Elaine is eye-opening.
Really?
Yes, you'll say, "Whoa, America?"
Right.
Yeah. Am I still
That's what you would say.
there?
As a matter of
America?
the people are beautiful to the soul.
Yes.
that cotton that's on that table, last year during the 100th anniversary, I just got out and made Kwame park on the side of the road because there's just rows of cotton still there, and I just started cutting cotton and made a bouquet before going to the memorial service and brought some home. And so the cotton that's on that table belongs to the fields of Elaine.
Elaine.
Yeah.
Stephen, how did you hear about the Elaine matter?
Who?
Stephen. Come
Just
on,
Bradley,
Rev.
guys. But I would say that my father talked to us about it. He was, how can I put it? He was pretty outspoken. And I think he came across and saying that, understand your granddaddy killed a white man and got away with it. So that was his take from it. Because at that point we was, what I would say, free-ish. And so we was living in Chicago.
You gonna make a series, free-ish? I'm waiting on it.
Yeah, free-ish. And I always been a voice for the voiceless or an activist. And he just tell me, you're not the first one to fight for justice, And then he'll tell the story of his grandfather and his dad and everybody, and how from slavery to sharecropping and what happened in Elaine, and then how it leads to Bloody Sunday and things of that nature, and how that we are connected. But we used to go back to Arkansas every holiday, every summer break, every summer vacation, every spring break, and we was down there. So if it wasn't Edmondson, Arkansas, Helena, Ford City, Elaine, but just to hear him say that and knowing exactly who he was, but how I got caught up in all of this was kind of ironic. I was the director of nutrition for KIP Delta there in Helena, and the superintendent, which at the time was a white guy, he called me late night and said, "Hey, I'm supposed to speak at this engagement, but I can't make it. I'm stuck in New York. Can you go in my place instead?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." He said, "Well, my executive secretary will give you a call and he's going to tell you what it's all about." so you can do some research and go up there. I was like, oh, okay, what is it about really? He said, Elaine, Arkansas, race riot. That's what he said, 1919. I said, wow, you just sanitized it. He said, sanitize it. I said, yeah, you call it a race riot, which it was a massacre. He said, so you know what's going on? But he was like, yeah. And so executive secretary called me. He is he's Indian, and so he's trying to relate African American history to me, and I'm just laughing, and he was like, "What are you laughing at?" And I told him, I said, "Well, my great grandfather is Edward Coleman, and he is one of the 12." And so I started talking to him about it. He was like, "I didn't know anything about that." He said, "We are so sorry. Can you go by?" Like, yeah, I'll do it. And so by the time I got there, I was like, okay, they bringing some light to it, and hopefully we get more breath and wind up under it, so that we can all share this story globally. And because we as a people, far too often our stories get sanitized or mulled over. And as I hear the lady speaking about how everyone was saying, don't say anything about this, let sleeping dogs lie, and things of that nature. And that is what white supremacy does to Black people, to silence us, so that we won't fight for equality and justice. And now we sit in the midst of a pandemic, and we're still talking about reparations. And I gotta say it, what we saw last night at the debate, it's the same thing that Donald Trump is saying right now, is the same thing that sheriff said, that the niggas are uprising, they're killing white folks. He said, stand by and stand still. That's the exact same rhetoric. We got to understand that. We got to understand the climate that we are in. We got to continue to push the envelope. But more specifically, we got to make sure that the future generations see us fight. They understand what we're fighting for. And we cannot have another disconnect like this in 100 years. Because I think by the time we got to it, it was 97 years by the time we started celebrating it. Yeah. And so we have to make sure that we pass these stories down, the history down, to our children and our grandchildren. Let them know the struggle. Let them know what our grandparents did and what they endured every day. We cannot let it die off. And a lot of time we do that because we have to buy into what this social construct says, and we have to be successful on white levels, but we have to begin to carve out and create our own definition of success and what is successful. Because far too often we sit around here, we have to go to Ivy League schools just to feel successful, and I have to live in a certain neighborhood just to feel successful. But more often than not, you don't hear people say, like in my case, I'm successful because the average male when I was born didn't live past 16 years old. The average male, he'll have a felony by the time he's 18. He's been 10 years in jail by the age of 25, and I'm none of that. And so I know that it's successful. And so we have to begin to gauge that beyond a monetary value or materialism. And also back to someone said something earlier, it might have been Lisa, or it might have been a sister, Abdul. I think she might have said something about the ancestors and how it used to be. And in the midst of that, first thing came to mind, I'm finishing my PhD, so I'm writing my last dissertation. And in my studies of African American religion before white evangelicals came over and tried to teach us about Christianity, they took away all of our burial practices and what ancestors really mean to us. And ancestors, one African proverb says, the best life lived is a life lived just to be an ancestor. And so that understanding with an ancestor it's the communication between the physical and the non-physical. So that's the spiritual realm. And so an African religion says that they are active participants beyond the spirit realm and working with us and within our communities. And so we have to we have to stay connected to our ancestors, and that allows us to continue our journey knowing that we're not alone and there's someone up there this is a bad tongue-in-cheek word, but pulling the strings, and we have people fighting for us. And that give us more and more strength to fight the hypocrisy and the systemic racism that we see day in and day out. I think I said enough. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Stephen.
Oh, my pleasure.
Candace.
Well, I first became aware around 19 when I was 18 or 19 years old. And initially it was very hard to believe because my maternal grandfather, my mom's father, if you knew him, he was a storyteller. He had a story about everything, his travel, his youth, and it was something that he never mentioned. So I was like, this can't be real. So it was probably mid to late 20s where I really started learning and understanding that this indeed was something that happened. And like Aura was saying, all throughout childhood, it was nothing really discussed. And that's what made it so hard to believe that this much happened, in the place. I was a part of the last graduating class before Elaine was forced to consolidate. The district was forced to consolidate. So it was just, mind-boggling that something this, big or, destructive happened here and it was never uttered. So.
Thank you, Candace.
All right, and Lisa, tell us about your discovery story. Unmute yourself.
You muted, Lisa.
But yeah, well, I was saying that everyone's heard about mine, so I'm gonna be brief. I learned about 12 years ago when I was in school and looking for a book and saw it on Facebook, saw Blood in Their Eyes. So yeah, that's when I learned, looking at the book, didn't believe the book was real. Well, I thought it was fiction, something someone had made up. And when I went home to Elaine a couple of weeks later, I asked my grandmother about it and she confirmed that, it was indeed true and that it happened. I wish I was gonna be brief.
Thank you, Lisa.
Wait, Lisa, he has another book out about the
revision.
Yeah, Griff.
The revision.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I know he has the revised version out. Yes.
It's en route from Amazon. I ordered it.
Yes, and that's the second edition, revised edition, is written in conjunction with Guy Lancaster and Brian Mitchell, who added a lot more information that we did not know from studying the records of the American Legion's headquarters.
Okay, that's what I wanted. I'm hoping, because I knew about that 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of the things my grandmother mentioned to me, was that there was still I call it a hit, or it was still on the books of the Legion that they had been promised that they would get to hang the Elaine 12, whether they found guilty or not. That they promised that they were going to turn them over to land, turn them over, and so they could hang them. So I was told that years ago, and I think that's one of the letters. I think that was in the. I haven't read the book. I haven't read the revised version yet. So, but I'd heard that that was possibly one of the letters that they had gotten from there, or some of the information that they had gotten. Has anybody read it to confirm that?
Well, what we'll do is, Lisa, you get us everybody's address, and we'll send everyone a copy of the revised version on Friday.
Yes. And during I know I sent you a list of books, Lisa, to put on the Facebook page, like the suggested readings, and that's one of the books.
Okay.
So she'll have all of those suggested readings on there.
Oh, okay, because I didn't get it.
For me, like Aura, I only found out a couple years ago. And that was me going to the going to see the enslavement to mass incarceration in Montgomery.
That's when you found out about it?
That's when I started digging. And trying to really find my roots. I knew that my father's people were from the Delta, but just needed to know more information. And the Butler Center of Arkansas Studies has this massive collection of information, ancestral information, anything else.
Yes.
They have this collection of, my grandfather signed a World War I draft card that I was able to find, and his hometown was Elaine. Let's get that right. So I was able to keep digging and digging and digging, and found out that they were in Tappan. He was born in the 1900s. This is my great grandfather, born in the 1900s, and I'm still trying to uncover more information about their lives. I do know from the records that they were sharecroppers and tenant farmers. I knew that where we lived as a child, my father always had a garden. So they gardened a lot. They had chickens and things like that. And I can remember talking to my dad one time because they never had a good word or a kind word to say about white folks. They hate it, and I can say that because I lived it. They never, and even though my father had white friends, he did not like them. They never talked in a way that was positive. As a matter of fact, all of them, it was 9 of them as far as siblings, all of them always, they will always default to an entrepreneurial type occupation because they did not like working for the white man. They were all registered gun owners, and my aunts kept guns in their purses, and they were very, if I'll say, trigger happy in a lot of ways. I'm serious. In a lot of ways that, it was alarming in a lot of ways because I didn't know the extent of the trauma until I started finding out information about why they were the way they were, why they were referred to, and I'll just say it, my father would refer to white men as Perkawoods and crackers. That was it. That was never anything else that they were referred to. And I was, what is that? And he explained, but they still didn't talk about it. It was 9 of them, aunts, uncles, grandmothers, nobody said a word. And I understand why. It's clear now to me why there was such a hard conversation to have, and then to be told literally, go back to work and don't you say a word. I understand that.
This being 2020, next year, 2021, will be the observance of the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacre. And we are right now on the 101 anniversary of the Elaine massacre, last year being the centennial. Now, I'm going to open this up because I'm very curious, now that we have a lot of descendants here, but I'm very curious to hear from you guys on your feelings on the centennial of the massacre. One thing that I thought was very telling was the total absence of the state of Arkansas in any of the events surrounding the commemoration of the 100th anniversary. And we also had, you don't have to raise your hands, just start talking, Mary. We also had something going on between what was going on in Helena and what was going on in Elaine. Where are you guys feelings about what happened last year?
I want to address that because I have been addressing it.
Yeah, Aura.
And well, and the reason I do so, and I'm trying to remain brief because I want everyone here to have their voice.
Please talk your piece because we have a lot of people that are watching and they need to hear what you say.
But I forgot, but but first of all, I want to address the memorial. I've addressed it first and foremost. I'm a firm believer in people doing whatever it is they want to do with their money. And, had a right to put that memorial anywhere that they chose to. I felt insulted that it was put across the jail, prison, where our ancestors were brutalized. I felt that insult. That bothered me. And I'm gonna leave that alone. I was upset with all of the discord, with the fighting, the arguing, we want to do this and we want to do that. I felt and that's one of the reasons that the Descendants of the Elaine Massacre of 1919 came about. And, my grandmother raised me, and one of the things I want to always do is remain respectful to my elders. And then I want to represent my family, the Hicks family, well. And I want to represent my Elaine family, my Elaine community well. And I'm going to speak from my own place right now. I have issue with what's going on down at the Elaine Legacy Center, and I want to make that public. I feel that the voices of the descendants, I feel like my voice, and I probably need to stay with myself, and that's what I'm going to do because I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I'm going to say that I feel the voice of the Hicks family was suppressed. I felt that we were used, manipulated, exploited. I have a whole bunch of words, but I'm try to remember that I have the heart of my grandmother, but I have my mother's mouth. If anyone knows both my grandmother and my mother. And I just feel like, because I vouched for Dr. Olson at the Elaine Legacy Center. So I took it personally because I vouched for her, and I argued with my cousins. I argued with people in Elaine about her and what she was doing in Elaine. And I didn't know everything she was doing. And when I found out what she was doing, I was embarrassed and I was humiliated because I was up in the face of my folks, my family, my friends, Elaine community. And I'm saying, well, she's doing good work. She's doing this. But when I went to her, I said, now, when I work with anybody, I do good business. I'm here working for the benefit of my community. I have no agenda. I want no money. I want no job. I want no grant. I want nothing. I'm here for my people. Respect that, and I respect you. And I felt disrespected. And that hurt me to my heart. And now my goal with this, I got to fix this because I hurt my people. And I got to fix this. And nothing's going to stop me from fixing. This is my purpose now for the descendants and for my Elaine community. I got work to do. And I'm not going to let anyone stand in my way. When I say I'm going to fix it, if it takes to my last breath, I'm going to fix this. And I want anyone in the Elaine community, and my family will check me. Believe that. My sister will call me and tell me in a minute, put that phone down. Get off of social media. And, I can convey to my Elaine family, my Elaine community, surrounding communities, when I'm doing this work, if I do anything, if I get out of order, for those of you who know my grandmother, if I get out of order and do anything that's not decent and in order, you have my permission to call me and check me. And if I don't get checked, you call my family, they'll check me. That's my promise. I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna make this right.
Well, let me just say one thing. I went down to Elaine the first time in 2015, and then I was invited down to Elaine to the opening of the Turning Point Park. And one of the first things that I noticed that there were two white women, Mary Olson and Pat Kinzel or Noza, who I'm talking about. And I was like, how is it that this town, they're talking about the Elaine massacre. And actually went around asking people, going to the little local where people got chicken and gas and all this stuff, asking, do you know anybody that's related to anyone who was involved in the Elaine massacre, who was the family member was killed, and no one would speak or say anything to me. They looked at me as an outsider. Ora was really the first person that talked, and Reverend Gibson were the first two people that talked to me about, and I couldn't figure out the dynamics between these two white women. And as time went on, each time I went down there, I would hear negative things about these women, not from Black people, but from one white woman about the other white woman. And I was like, and where does the Black community fit into all of this? Where does the Black community fit into all of this? I knew what Ora's role was down there and helping with the Lee Street Community Center is, but I was like, she can't do this by herself. There's gotta be more people in this community that are ready, willing, able, capable of taking over to empower the Blacks in that community. Whether they were afraid, intimidated, I don't know what, I couldn't figure out what the whole thing was. And so I think in 2018, I brought a professor who lived in the county, DeShay County, right below Phillips County, with me. She was a professor from the University of Arkansas. She was born in Arkansas, Dumas, Arkansas. Her family has humongous land, Black professor. And I wanted her to meet both of these women to see if she got the same spin that I got. And I'm telling you, this woman is brilliant. She's worked in social justice, University of Massachusetts, retired Amherst. She's a professor emeritus or whatever, emeritus or whatever they call it. And when she met Mary Olson and talked to Mary Olson and listened to Mary Olson, and I says, what is your take? And she said, she's a poverty pimp.
Yes.
This is someone that's taking advantage for her own personal gain of the Black community. And there needs to be something needs to be done. And I didn't know what to do with it. And like I said, Lisa, I already had Ora in my corner. I'd already talked about Ora with Pat. But you know, we gotta get ourselves together. We can't be on two different sides. You know, we have to come together. And once I got these two women together, I didn't even know Lisa knew Ora, or Ora knew Lisa. But there it is. And with these two women, I think there's the force to be reckoned with. They're gonna help empower the people on both sides of this in Elaine, those people that are dealing with Elaine and the residents of Elaine, and dealing with the problems of Elaine, and dealing with what they see as far as the Legacy Center, as far as what's happening with the Lee Street Community Center. I think these things need to be addressed. I think with some type of restorative justice, it can move forward, but you can't do it if you got one side saying one thing and you have another side saying another thing. And then you have one side with one narrative that doesn't even make any sense. And telling people, the residents of Elaine, to believe that narrative, a false narrative that cannot be proven, and then holding them accountable for it, and you're gonna be the white savior. We don't need any more white saviors. We need to save ourselves. So they got the right ones. And we as descendants to stand by and support what's happening in Elaine, even though we don't live there or whatever, but to support, to know that the descendants are behind this. The descendants are behind it. And I'm on a path of reconciliation with Chester Johnson, getting whites involved, but they stay in the background. not in the forefront.
Yeah.
It's for us to be in the forefront and to get, what's due as far as that is concerned. And I think when we talk about restorative justice, it's just not the state of Arkansas. It's also the federal government with what happened in Elaine. Because, a thing just came up about the Las Vegas, how they gonna settle with the Las Vegas, the guy that killed all those people in Las Vegas. The families are getting settlements. What happened to the people of Elaine? And I don't mean giving people money, putting them in their pocket, but building the community, building a real place for the children to go to, building a real place for the community to gather. I mean, a real place, not the Legacy Center, because Mary Olson owns the Legacy Center. The Black people in the Elaine don't own the Legacy Center. They don't own the Lee Street Community Center. Something that they can say that this is run by Black people, by the people of Elaine. And that in that way, it will bring business into Elaine.
Yes.
And that's all I have to say.
Sustainability, for sure. Thank you so much. Aura, you are bursting. Are you?
Because, just like it's some in the words of Miss Harriet Tubman, I could have freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed more slaves, 1,000 slaves, if only they knew they were slaves. Living here in Elaine, I have 3 daughters. I got a lot to say. I'm very passionate about what I do. I work with the kids. I'm not being paid to work with the kids. It's in my heart. And, Miss Sheila, when I first met her, it was just something about her. I fell in love with her. Same way with Miss Lisa. I grew up here in Elaine knowing my elders, and I respect my elders to the fullest. But my own personal problem that I have with our community is, like Miss Sheila was saying, we have individuals. Wait a minute, let me back up. Okay, let me go back to the centennial. I said it once, I said it twice, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it 1,000 times more. What people fail to realize here in Elaine is when individuals come, they tell their stories, they write their books, they write their stories, they do their autobiographies, they do their interviews, they do all of these good things, okay? They get funds from these things, and not once have I seen these funds being given back to our community. That's where I have my biggest problem. Elaine, the blood that has been left here in Elaine, it is plentiful. But instead of us being able to honestly heal from that hurt, it's just like when all of the recorders come and all of the cameras come and it's on, Elaine appears to be this great place, this place of togetherness. That's a bunch of bull. Because once the cameras are gone, once the recorders have been turned off, the reality hits. We're still not treated fairly here in Elaine. It's still the white folks' side and the Black folks' side. It's still, when we were raised, we were told not to bring too much attention to ourselves. And now that I'm older, and I'm gonna speak for myself just like Miss Lisa, now that I'm older, that same attitude where my parents said, well, you don't do this or you don't do that, know your place. I'm at a point and I'm at an age now where I'm wanting to know. I'm here to tell people, exactly as a Black woman, what is my place? Is it not my place to stand up for what I believe in? Is it not my place to stand up for what I know is right? And the fact that we have 2 white individuals that have led so much for the Black community, in the beginning, I didn't see it like I see it now. Because when you get to the point where your pockets continue to grow and my community continues to decline and my children still are left without, I got a problem with it. I'm not gonna discredit nothing that Miss Mary Olson has done, but my problem is, what has been your motive behind it? Not once have I seen a Boys and Girls Club being created. Not once have I even seen the talk of the discussion or a blueprint for a swimming pool. Our kids have begged for a swimming pool here in our community for several years. We've had a private pool here for years. When I say years, I mean years. Not once did a Black child have the opportunity to go there and swim. But in the same sense, everybody wants to talk about everything good that they've done for Elaine, that they're doing for Elaine. But at the end of the day, everything done, it has not been to edify Elaine. Because if it was to edify Elaine, we wouldn't be in the same position that we are in. So when I say those things, it brings about a lot of my emotions and a lot of my feelings because I live here. I stay here. I lay my head here every night and wake up here every day. I see this daily. But other people that come in, they only get to see the surface. They don't know what it's like to have a mayor in our community that will be a big supporter for the white side of town and not a big supporter for the Black side of town. It's not fair that when you ride on one side of town, you can see that the streets and the garbage is not as bad as it is on the other side of town. And the reason my people don't say anything because they feel like, okay, this is how we supposed to be treated. No, it's not how we supposed to be treated. But then I get labeled as a troublemaker because I voice my opinion or I voice my power because my power is within my voice. So when I speak my truth or I tell you this is not right, this doesn't feel right to me, this is not fair. I can see that on Sundays or Saturday nights when they pick my trash up and they drop trash on my driveway, they don't get a broom and they don't sweep it up on a dustpan. But on the other side of town, if they drop trash, automatically they know to get a dustpan and sweep that trash up. That's not fair. So when I voice my opinion and I speak out about it, then it's so. See, those are the things that people don't get the opportunity to see. And like with Miss Mary Olson, she lives in Helena, West Helena. If she cares so much and she was as passionate and there wasn't some underlying alternative or motive behind her works, she would move to Elaine. She would reside here in Elaine. I mean, Elaine good enough for you to come down here and to pay people and get people to do stuff for you, but Elaine's not good enough for you to live here. I have the ability to be anywhere in this world. I even went off to school. I went to Michigan. I came back because, like I said, my heart is here in Elaine. I could be anywhere making blue cools of money, but I chose to be here in Elaine because my heart is here. I have a passion for seeing a brighter future for our youth, and that's why I'm so emotional. Because all of the work, and I want to touch on this, the memorial that was placed in Helena, everybody has something negative to say about it. And this is my opinion. Some have gotten mad behind my opinion, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's my opinion. That monument was placed there by a man who used his own money, used his own in-kind donations, friends, however he got his funds, it was his money. Now, Elaine has some prominent individuals. If it mattered that much to us, if it mattered that much to our people, why couldn't we have came together before now and done this before now? Now that someone else has done it, it's a problem. I understand the concept of it being placed across from the jail where our ancestors were jailed at, but in the same sense, we could have done this if we would have just gotten ourselves together, put our differences aside, and realize that as a culture, we're powerful. But our downfall is I'm not going to work with you because I don't like you. So if I don't like you, I'm going to partner up with this culture over here. I'm going to partner with the white race. When they get a chance or they come and they discuss something that I discuss you and I don't like you, I'm going to let them know everything negative about you. If we would just be able to learn to set aside our differences and know that it's not about power. It's not about who's better than the next person, but we're all coming together for the greater good of building a brighter future for our youth, and to stop allowing the system to oppress us and to continue to kill us, and let them know that they are strong and able, embodied young individuals, and that their future is even brighter, and that they are a powerful being. Only then will we begin to grow. Only then will we begin to build where we need to build. So those are my expressions, and they are deep because I can go on and on. But I feel myself getting a little deeper and deeper, and I'm gonna cut it off there. But I have a lot to say, a lot.
For now, because we want you to keep talking and keep speaking. You keep talking and keep speaking for sure.
As a young Black woman, I didn't realize until I got in RC, racial counseling, just how badly affected I was.
And that's exactly what
Go ahead, Aura.
I've been carrying a weight. I've been carrying a weight that I didn't even know I was carrying. I wasn't born back then, but to learn and know the details about what happened to my people, and to hear my young adults now and my young people say, well, it don't matter if I vote. It don't matter if Elaine have this, or it don't matter. It does matter. It matters to me because I got 3 girls growing up, coming up behind me. I want them to understand, and I want them to know that you are just as privileged as any other race. And just like in the near future, my plans are to eventually run for mayor here in Elaine. I want to run for mayor because I want my people to know that we can live in nice houses. We can have streets that are nice. We can have neighborhoods that we don't have to worry about abandoned houses on every other corner, but we go on the other side of town and it's nice. So I know a lot of people are going to have a lot of negative things to say, but that's my truth. And how can I sit here and say that I want better and I'm going to do better when I can't even speak my truth? So if my truth is going to offend you, then you should have been offended in the first place, because if you take offense to my truth, then that lets me know that your heart is not in the right place. And I don't need no half-stepping for here in Elaine, because like I said, we have great prominent young boys, young girls here in our community. And I just need them to know that at the end of the day, you're just as privileged. You don't have to move far away to have better. Let's start right now. Start right now, right here in our own community. And the fact of the matter is that, like I was saying in the beginning, when everybody comes and they write their stories, they write their books. That's all nice and lovely. But exactly what are giving back to help our community? It don't even have to be in funds. It don't even have to be in money. Give us something that's going to help our children. We got a library, y'all. We got a library here. You know what the hours of operation for our library is? And it's not even open all during the whole week. Those hours of operations, they're paying a white lady to be there during the whole week. Well, not the whole week, but on certain days for a certain amount of time. But between the hours of 8 and 3, our children are normally in school. Mm-hmm. So our children are not able to utilize the library. So who is this library benefit? So these are a lot of the things that I've been taking note of. These are a lot of the things that I've been writing down. I've been taking my notes. I've been silent. I've been in the background. I haven't really been speaking a lot of noise because, like I said in the beginning, I just didn't know how traumatized I was behind everything that has taken place. But once I got into racial counseling, I started understanding. I started being able to discharge and allow myself to not hold it in, not harbor those emotions, not harbor that anger, because it's not mine.
Yes.
It's not how my ancestors were done. And at the end of the day, yes, I feel like the federal and state government are just as much to blame for everything that happened back then. And they need to serve the consequences behind it. Because are you going to tell me that for every family that's receiving some type of monetary payment for lives that were taken at a dang on concert is far more greater and more horrifying than lives of Black innocent people that lives were taken just because they wanted fair treatment? They weren't going to fight nobody. They weren't going to hurt nobody. They were going because they knew the way that they had been being treated was wrong. They just wanted to be treated fairly. So you mean to tell me I have the possibility of losing my life because I wanted to be treated fairly? That's not right. That's not right. And as a Black woman, I refuse to continue to stand by and allow this to happen.
Don't.
So
broadband. Real quick, I know Lisa was speaking about Elaine not having broadband. Is that also one of the needs?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We don't have broadband. If you come to Elaine and you look at our water tower is rusty. If you Elaine, you know, we started a project back in 2013 where we wanted to claim Elaine as America's birdhouse capital. That's a project that we're doing with Reverend George Andrew Gibson. And Patricia Kinsel was one of the white ladies that Miss Sheila has spoke about. True enough, she has done a lot. But in conversation with her, she does not truly understand the dynamics and the needs of our community. And what I mean by that, her relationship with the children here is good, but she always has a tendency to compare the children here to the children in Fayetteville. And that brings me to this.
Yeah,
I understand everybody talks about the reparation for our community, but you got to think about it like this. If you've never been taught to budget, if you've never been taught how to build your credit, but you want to buy a house, so you get all of this money and your credit is a 300 or a 250 and you're going to purchase a home, you're still not going to get the results you're looking for because your credit score is not where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying that to say, if you set aside funds and you give each family a certain amount of money, what tools do we have as individuals that's going to allow us in knowing that that money, once we get it, we'll be able to take it and allow it to grow our community?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The way they're going about doing things, it's just backwards. It's backwards. And like I'm going to say this again, it was not until I started taking racial counseling till I understood all of my emotions, all of my feelings. And when I honestly say my first time being able to discharge, I felt good. It felt good to be able to get my emotions out and not have someone look at me in a manner where you something wrong with you. You know, your mind ain't together. You don't have it all together. That they did not judge me like that. That allowed me to be able to open up and speak my truth and not give two flying hoots about who feathers I ruffle, because this is my truth. This is what other people that come into Elaine don't get to see, but I get to see it every day because I live here. I wake up here. I go to sleep here. So this is my truth.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aura.
Stephen, Aura gave us a lot to unpack.
I just want to say this real quick before you say anything. If you need like campaign support or some type of, committee or group, let me know. Whenever you decide to run, I definitely want to help support in whatever way I can. But go ahead, Kwame.
Oh, well, Stephen isn't there right now.
I really here. He may have.
Okay, no problem.
Candace. Did you want to talk to Candace?
Go ahead. You just called her.
Candace, I know you were sitting and you were saying.
Doors of the church are open.
Yeah.
My letter, Christian experience, all that good stuff. I mean, there's nothing else to say.
I know.
Or Lisa, they got it all. They got it all.
No, Candace, I want you to say something, and we're gonna correct Clarice how we say Elaine.
Elaine.
You said say it.
Elaine.
There you go.
Yeah.
How else do you say it?
Now, some people say Elaine. I don't know how they say it, but it sounds funny. Maybe it just sounds funny to me.
I've heard, and I've also said in the past, Elaine.
Elaine, yeah. That's what they say.
Right.
Yeah.
Elaine.
Elaine.
Okay, well, one thing that she brought up that we definitely need to discuss is reparations, restorative justice. What happened in Elaine 101 years ago was not only a tragedy, it was something that, listening to what Aura said, is still going on. The white landowners still have their hold over the Black community, and what I want to know is how can reparation, what does reparations look like because we reparations does have to be on the table for this conversation. But what does it look like for us to help the descendants of the Elaine massacre to, like Ora said, build up their community and to create something that is sustaining and something that is constantly giving back? Anybody, what does that look like?
Reparation to me looks like, you know what, speaking that truth. Stop watering down our history. Let our history be known. Teach our people, teach our children. Put our history out there as it should be. Stop trying to cover it up or mask it and, you know, make it look good for a certain. Speak the truth about what really happened with our history. First and foremost, you know, you see history. Like I said, I was in a freshman, and I vaguely remember, and it wasn't even a paragraph that just scribbled or scrabbled or just it really didn't. It just tapped on the 1919 massacre. It's not in our history books. That's a part of history that needs to be known. It's a part of history that needs to be taught. And like old Senator Tom Cotton was saying, that, you know, as far as like our history of like slavery and all of those different things, that's what made me. That's what made us who we are. That bravery, that courage that they displayed back then needs to be known about. It needs to not just be known about, but there needs to be some type of significance here in our community, in our town, that lets them know, oh, okay, this happened. This really happened. It's no longer saying, okay, it didn't happen. Okay, we've gotten past that. Reparation looks like you're going to build up this community for our youth. You're going to let them know this is a part of history that you'll forever, you know, be a part of. This is history that's ongoing. This is history that really meant something. This is that history that's showing that bravery, that courage that you guys possess now. To me, that's what reparation looks like. It looks like speaking that truth, acknowledging that truth, and not just acknowledging it with your words, but with your actions, with your presentation.
Yeah.
That's what reparation looks like to me.
Lisa, you had your hand up.
Well, I was gonna, Candace, because I want her to say something in this. I want her to speak on that. Candace, I want you to speak on that.
Well, I agree with Ora. I would like to see some kind of public acknowledgement of this. I know earlier you all were speaking about Tulsa, and I was reading up on how, you know, Oklahoma has, you know, tried to do reparations for Greenwood, that community that was destroyed. And they passed a bill in 2001 in the form of low-income student scholarships. And they also established an economic development authority for Greenwood. So in those same lines of just showing some kind of investment, you know, into our communities. Not saying, you know, you got to write everybody this $10,000 check or anything like that. It probably never happened anyways. That kind of investment is needed to build up our community. Some kind of acknowledgement from our state legislator. I don't know if that's ever happened, but kind of in the same lines of what Oklahoma did. I don't know the progress or the success of that, but the same lines of investing in us economically, investing in our youth via scholarship or other ways. That's how I view reparations, and those things are needed now, and they'll pay off for sure in the future as well.
Yeah,
I will also add that I think it was the 62nd Assembly, General Assembly, and we had together SB 591, which was to have a committee on racial justice, restorative justice, that type of thing, and trying to build that. And it was because of the 100th anniversary of Elaine, that it was important to seize that moment, and also to try and create a committee of peers and people who are committed to seeing sustainability, committed to seeing some reparation, committed to
Restorative justice.
right, committed to restorative justice,
Education.
not just in Phillips County, but the
Statewide.
other statewide. And so that was what that bill was about. But we were fought so hard by Mary Olson in the Elaine Legacy Center and other people that, you know, dealt with her, that it was hard.
For that bill?
Yeah, could you be specifically? Yeah, she was, but I want her to be specific about exactly what that bill.
Okay. Okay.
Specifically
the
what
bill, what the bill was set up to do, it was set up to set up a statewide committee of historians that would actually put in documents the history of racialized violence in the state of Arkansas. The state of Arkansas is the third deadliest state when it comes to racialized violence. 492 lynchings occurred in the state of Arkansas that we know of.
More than that, actually. Yes.
Yeah, that we know of, that's well documented. So the first step was this committee was to gather all of that information to create a document similar to what they've done in Tulsa. They've done it in Maryland. They've actually even done it in Mississippi. And they're in the process of doing it in Alabama right now. So that was the first step. The second step was for once you get all that information, for there to be a Arkansas history course that would be required of all high school students in the state of Arkansas so that they could learn about that. Yes, Sheila, I see you. You gotta go.
I see you. You have, okay.
Hold on, let's go ahead and say something before you go, because
Yes,
she's
please.
in the hospital and she has to get off. And then
Yeah, I have surgery early in the morning, so I have to go. Lisa, what are you saying?
Can we send Sheila energy? And Stephen, you sound like you had a little preacher in you. Can you say
Stephen is a minister.
Stephen.
Real quick?
Yeah.
Reverend Bradley.
Yes.
Give us some.
Rem.
God, how we love you, how we thank you, God. God, we're not coming for ourselves, actually anything materialistic, no cash, no clothes, no cars, and no checks, God. But we coming on the behalf of your daughter and our sister Sheila, God. God, as she go upon the surgery, Lord God, we ask you to meet her there, God. You be the surgeon, God. You say you are Jehovah Rapha. You are a healer, God. So do what you do best, God. And we plead the blood of Jesus over her right now, Lord God, that she will come out better than ever, God. So, God, you are the master surgeon, God. You are the doctor and the chief, God. So do what you do best. Show up and show out for our sister, God. We lay hands towards her, God. Send light and energy her way, God. Give us strength and boldness, Lord God, and all the courage that she needs to get through this. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Sheila.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Marcus, I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Talk to you later, Mom.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Love everybody that's on here. I love hearing all your voices. Really, it's so enlightening. It fills my heart. It fills my heart. Lisa, you know how I feel about you. You know, and so do you, Aura. Yeah. And I want to feel this way about everybody that's on here, because we can't go forward alone. We have to do this together.
Indeed.
so
Thank you.
All right.
So the the second step was to create the required course for Arkansas history of all high schools in the state of Arkansas, so that the history of racialized violence in the state of Arkansas would be something that would actually be taught in the schools. So the third step of that particular bill, SB 591, was to find out what the descendants of this racialized violence needed as far as economic development is concerned, and to create economic development zones specifically for the descendants of this racialized violence, these 492 lynchings, and in that 492 lynchings, the Elaine massacre is included in that number. So when we created this bill,
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, let me.
I just want.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to include what the only issue. It wasn't the only issue, but one of the things I was asking was that on those committees that there be a descendant from Elaine, someone who, like Candace or Aura, one of those individuals who are currently living in Elaine, an Elaine citizen who was a descendant, be on the committee. That was what I was asking. Not me, but somebody. Yeah.
Yes, and the first draft of that bill did not include what you just talked about, Lisa, but we were open to making the changes as needed. So what we did is we took this bill to different legislators, and we actually got the support of all of the legislators that cover Phillips County. All of them jumped on board. We got the Arkansas Black Legislative Caucus, they jumped on board. We went to the governor, we met with the governor. The governor jumped on board. So we had it set up where this bill was going to be passed, and we were getting ready to see something. Then Mary Olsen came and threw a monkey wrench into the whole process. She and Judge Wendell Griffin joined forces against this bill and totally derailed everything, and basically told us that we have no right trying to parachute into Elaine and benefit by using because the bill was going to be named after the Elaine massacre. I forgot what the exact name was, but we didn't have the right to use the words Elaine massacre in the name of the bill. So basically,
we changed the language.
Yeah,
because we were asked to change it. We were asked to change the name, so we changed the name. But the premise and everything we wanted to do was still there. It was all good intention. I was also told that I was diaspora, that I was not like. This is by Mary Olsen, that you're diaspora. So, and I kept hearing the terms my people from her.
Yeah,
She
kept saying
my people.
Yeah.
And so,
let me say this. When I found out about the bill, Dr. Olsen didn't tell me. I found out about it. I said, Dr. Olsen, what is this? And I said, send it to me. And I said, send it to me. And I kind of knew. And then when she sent it to me, I read it. I called her. I'm like, Dr. Olsen, why did the community, why didn't you not call? This is a piece of legislation that would have benefited Elaine.
Yes.
And you did not let Elaine know. You did not let the descendants know. You did not come to Candace or Aura or who. You did not let anyone know. You spoke for us.
Yes. As a matter of fact, let me say this, Lisa.
It was not fair. It broke my heart because I vouched for her.
Yeah.
And she hurt my people.
We were told
broke my heart.
We were told when we had our meeting with the governor that Mary Olsen needed to be at the table. We were
Not you, not me. She wanted to be at the table.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yes, Aura.
Now, this is the same Mary Olsen that lives in Helena, West Helena. I mean, what right does she have to be at the table? When she first started off with a bunch of Mexicans and they kind of died off. Now she working on the Black community and they're slowly dying off because they're learning the truth. But she said, my people.
Yes.
My people.
Yes.
What gives her the right? What gives her the privilege?
That's why
to
we're
say
here.
My people.
That's why we're here, because like I said, we know our power.
See, this is my, it's sad to say, but this is my first time getting all the in-depth details about the bill and it not passing. And at the end of the day, for her to incorporate my people and she needs to sit at the table. She needs to sit at the table that she ain't even inviting people from actual descendants from Elaine to see that.
Well, here's who I'm not dragging in it. She had James with her, and she spoke. She was the person at the table speaking for the community of Elaine.
That's the key word. She was speaking for.
Yes.
She, you know what? She chose the words to be said. Though, Jesus.
The piece of legislation is on APJMM, and we can also send it to you. We will send you that SB 591 for all of you to read and to dissect and to add to, because the 63rd Assembly is coming in 2021. We have to band together to get something done.
Our goal is when the legislature comes back in session in January is to bring this back up. And I've actually added to it where we're also demanding a complete pardon of 122 wrongfully convicted defendants from the Elaine massacre. So we've added that to the bill that we're going to bring up in January.
And I'll say this, and I'm gonna stop dragging. I'm gonna say this because I need to say this, because this has been on my heart and mind, and to a point where when she did her demolishing of everything that we tried to come in and do, I just had to pray about it, and I said, I spoke to because I talked to my ancestors, and I said, y'all gonna have to do something. Try to do everything that we can, and we keep getting blocked by this woman.
But the thing is, you have to understand is that Mary Olson's power was Judge Wendell Griffin.
Yeah,
he's the one that empowers her.
Sadly, and that was the hurtful part for us. That was the most hurtful part for us, because there was this trust that we had. There was this, for us, we looked up to him. We were meeting in his church. APJMN was meeting in this church about this piece of legislation, and then all of a sudden to find out that she was leaning on his abilities and things like that, so that she could keep blocking things that was going on, to the point where what she started doing was she started calling these legislators that was on board and telling them that they had no right to Elaine.
And she threatened the governor.
She threatened them and said, you have no right to Elaine.
Yes.
Don't mess with our community. Don't mess with our people unless you, there was some talk about having marijuana dispensaries. Yes. And that was important to her, that the people of Elaine had a dispensary. Yes, or
yes,
I'm not.
They need a marijuana dispensary.
So I'm not a liar. So I'm just telling you what we had to deal with.
And I learned about it first. I'm like I said, y'all, I failed my people, but I gotta.
Yes. So those are the hardships that we had to deal with, to the point where I said, if the community doesn't rise up, it's gonna take one or two things. I won't say that first thing, but that other thing,
she's gonna have to leave.
Right.
You know what? And I want to share this with y'all. And I mean, the spirit just gonna let me say this. You know, when you build everything and base everything on faith, and you pray about everything, God ain't gonna let nothing sneak up on you, and God is not going to allow the unjust to be justified. So I'm saying all this to say that slowly our people are learning and have learned what her underlying motive is. Now, if we all can come together like we should, this too shall pass.
Yes.
Because it's not everything. See, I've heard things, I've seen things, and I have my own opinion. But your actions tend to show me more than what your words speak. And when she say my people, But if you are for my people, then the things that you are doing would be for my people. But there have been things that you've been doing that has been a slap in the face for my people.
Indeed.
See, I'm learning a lot of new things, and the more that I've learned, the higher that I'm getting on, allowing myself to say, this woman gonna have to move. Why is it so important to her? That's just the question. That's the question. That's the $1 million question right now from his Orb Escape Truth.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Or
all right,
hold on a
now
second,
what we want to do,
Stephen.
Stephen has to leave, so we're going to let him say goodbye, and then we also need to wrap up and be respectful of the time and let everyone know that the Descendants will come together again on Saturday to do some healing, because a lot of things that's been talked about today, that we'll have to take a couple of days off and then come back on Saturday.
I do have an affirmation decree that I can send Sheila and Stephen that I shared with, that I do want us to say and repeat, and we'll put it on the screen for us. Stephen,
go ahead and say your closing words,
piece,
sir.
and then if you want to, whatever you think you need to do.
I would say that I love the passion that I hear. I love the dedication, and I love the energy that we're putting into it. I know this is the first time I've been on. I know y'all been doing this for a while. But I would like to see more action. What are action plans? What are the steps to get to where we need to be? And what does it look like? I think, was it Frederick Douglass, power concedes nothing without demands.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to make sure we have that. And also I would add 2 pieces of silver in the bucket for reparations. What does reparation looks like? Reparations, I think the sisters talked about Black truth, Black stories, Black history, and Black ancestors. Beyond that, we have to make sure that we are specific when we are in the midst of legislations and writing bills, to be exact and knowing what it looks like for the first readings and what you have to do to get it past the first readings, so we won't get derailed or side swipe like we did on this last one. Yeah. And so you have to be able to play the game. And then Donald Trump said it last night, and I don't even like this guy. He said, I paid $750 worth of taxes and I made $29 million. But he said, I use the same laws that you guys passed to do that. Mm-hmm. And so we have to do the exact same thing. And understand that America has created this hostile environment, and they have what they got because they lynched, killed, murdered, burned, raped, kidnapped, and etc. And don't think they're not go. That's what it takes to get our power back. And we have to understand that. Mm-hmm. Yes, I am a man of God. I got a master's in divinity, ordained, whatever. But I understand one thing.
We're like Malcolm and Martin, huh?
Pushed it together. Yes. Merged together. Yes. But Malcolm in his life, he said, I integrated my people into a burning house. Yeah. Yes. I should have never did that. Yeah. I should have listened to Malcolm. I should have listened to Marcus. I should have listened to them. But he felt as if, in the good Christian manner, that inclusivity works together. Yeah. But you cannot, I said it before in Little Rock, we can't reconcile to something that we never been a part of in the beginning. Right. We have to understand that. But reparations looks like the next 40 to 100 generations of free education, not in the state, not in the city, but worldwide. Our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren should have free education. That's number one. Number two, all debt should be wiped away, and we should have an 800 credit score. And why is that? Because they give the Chinese, they give the Asians, they give the Iranians, and they give the rest of them an 800 credit score and a $50,000 credit line when they get here. So we want to, if we're talking about equality and economic power, we have to begin with that. And then from that point on, yes, economic development happens. And what does that look like? We need the entire Elaine to be turned over to us, period. So we can build from that point on. But not only Elaine, there's other places in the Delta, other rural areas, and other land that we need to be able to do this. Why? The sister Ora said it earlier, but not in this terms. We have to redefine what Blackness really is. Because everybody in the world, first thing they know about Black, I don't care if you from Korea or Russia, you was a slave. That's the first thing they know. So we have to redefine that narrative and say, no, we didn't start off being slaves. We are cultivators of creation. We're the first ones to harness fire. We're the first one to create a garden. We're the first ones to know what a midwife is. We're the first ones to experience death. So we have to redefine the narrative, and we have to be crystal clear of which direction we're headed. And understand this also, everything Elaine is suffering with, it's a system that every Black community in America is suffering with. Disproportionate rate of the judicial system, lack of education, lack of opportunity, all of that is systemic, and we have to make sure that we address it, not just on a state's level. Yes, we might start with a model, but understand statistically when we're in front of the legislation that we can prove that this is a system throughout the Black communities throughout America, which is done intentionally and systematically to make sure that they wipe us out. And we need to push it all the way to the UN for crimes against humanity for the Elaine massacre. So that they understand, see, that's what happened in the Holocaust. That's why they got the financial reparations. But beyond that, they got the land. So and also the Sioux did it. We just saw the Cherokees do it. We saw the people in Salt Lake City do it. They're doing this off of civil rights. So we have to be intentional, and we have to be as clever as the wolf that's out there and that snake. So we got to make sure that we are on here together and we read every piece of legislation, every idea pushed across. And I'm finna stop preaching, but I'm gonna say this. In the book of Psalms, somewhere you can find, if you tore it out, the man said, I almost slipped. God, every time I turn around, the wicked is being prosperous. Every time I turn around, those who don't love you, God, don't pray to you, they rising higher and higher, but we're digging a ditch lower and lower. Then he goes and said, I almost slipped, and until I seen the kingdom of heaven. The moral of the story is we have to stop letting people write our story. Africa proverb says, once we stop letting the hunter tell the story that he's victorious and let the lion that's hunted tell the story, we'll find out that the hunter don't win all the time, but the lion wins most of the time. So we have to take grips of it, and we got to tell our own stories. We need our own media. We got to do this more often. We have to have a more social media presence and a voice to speak to systemic issues. The reason why I say systemic is because if I talk about Black communities as a whole in America, so I can push the argument deep enough to your community in Chicago, your community in Los Angeles, your community in Little Rock, and then when I bring Elaine to show that this is systemic and this is the root of it. This is where it started. So everybody can come in and find commonality and mutuality, and then we can push the needle even farther beyond Arkansas all the way to Canada, and then we can have traction. And I know it's not going to happen in 2 weeks, but I know that we got a good grounding. I bless and thank each and every one of you for your work and your witness. Continue to do what you do. Keep me in the loop. I'll be on here as much as I can, but if I get it in advance, I can ship them. I can work my schedule around because I want to be a part of this. And I did not know about the centennial until the day before. Mayor Olson called me and said, tomorrow, are you going to be here? I said, I don't even know nothing about it. I'm in Atlanta at a conference. She said, did anybody tell you tomorrow's a centennial? I said, I know about a centennial, but I know nothing about the memorial. But I'm upset from seeing all the white faces that I saw in the video. And we have to stop that too, you know? And so we got to come together. Bless you. I love you. Y'all have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.
God bless you.
With that, let's go ahead and give everybody an opportunity to make some closing statements so that we can respect everybody's time, because we said we were going to end at 9 and it's 7 minutes till. Let's start with Dorothy.
Yes.
Can you go ahead and give us your closing statement on being a descendant and what you got from viewing the film and from participating in this discussion?
A lot, very interesting. But my question, and I haven't gotten it answered, if this happened in Elaine, Hoopsburg, why is the memorial in Helena? Now, when I went to Helena for the memorial, I had a strange feeling something was not right there. And I've been asking that question. Why is it in Helena and not in Elaine, where it should be? That's where it happened.
Okay.
You might have to.
I've been
Okay,
asking.
Lisa,
I think I asked Lisa the other night when I talked to her.
Yes. I don't know. And I don't know the people all involved with the putting the memorial in Helena. Just from what I've read, I just feel that this is my own personal. I feel that they felt they needed to do something, and that is what made them feel better about what happened in Elaine.
And let me say this, Dorothy, and I'll say this without bringing her name back into this energy in this space, is that, and I'll just say representative.
there were forces that prevented it from being put.
The gatekeeper of Elaine, and I'm just gonna say it like, okay, so no, Lisa, don't even know. Okay, the representative that was always
elders, Miss Candace's mom and Mr. Those are our gatekeepers.
Absolutely, you absolutely right. I think gatekeeper is used in different ways, but I won't use it for this, just out of respect for the elders in Elaine. But the one that was representing herself as the community and the voice of Elaine was brought to the table in Helena with this committee to work in tandem with this committee so that something could be brought to Elaine. And because of the request for this large amount of funds and all of these astronomical things that were not in the reach of the person who was using his own personal funds to get this memorial, this person was not a part of it anymore because of that.
Yeah, okay.
So that is it wasn't that, because we talked to a lot of the committee members with us going to Elaine and visiting it around the centennial and this piece of legislation, is because of that, because of the unwillingness to really collaborate and work with this committee, they didn't have any choice but to say, okay, you keep coming up with all of these other things and we're trying to work with, and this person was hard to work with. And so they just stuck with the monument.
And she wanted some money?
She wanted money. She wanted funds. That's always been the issue.
You know how much?
Pardon?
Say again?
Do you know how much she wanted?
I don't remember the amount, but it had a couple of zeros in it. I can find out that amount and let you know.
Did she say what she wanted to do with it?
No, it was money that it did not appear that it was going to the community.
She wanted to put it in her pocket.
So we will say this, that group of people on that committee had well intentions, just like everybody else that tried to come into Elaine at that time to try to help and support the community, but they were always blocked by the person that was supposed to be the spokesperson for the community, that at least we thought was the spokesperson of the community, because nobody else was mentioned.
Yeah, my understanding of the original vision is that there would be something in Helena, something in Elaine, and then something at the site of the Hoop Spur Church. And that was the original vision, but with all of this negativity that was put up by Mary Olson, then the committee said, well, let's just focus on what we have the power to do without getting her permission. So
that's why that, and not only that, is the other thing is, I think it was as far as the historic trail or something like that. The infrastructure.
It's the civil rights trail. The civil rights trail. And the original vision was supposed to be part of the civil rights trail, because right now the civil rights trail ends in Memphis and picks up in Little Rock. So there's a goal to have it connect Memphis and Little Rock going through Lane.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Which would definitely bring some needed attention to Elaine to help build it.
Yes.
Infrastructure reason was part of that conversation too.
Yes.
Was making sure that when people stopped, they had restaurants to eat at, a place to sleep if they needed to. It was a lot of things. It was infrastructure, and also, sadly, it was this person representing who was not cooperating with the committee.
Okay.
Just blocked everything.
Question, it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
Okay, Candace, can you give us your final thoughts on the film and the discussion?
Oh, I didn't even.
Oh, Dorothy.
No,
Stop. Miss Dorothy, please continue. I thought you were finished. Please continue.
No, I am. I'm not gonna take up all the time. Come on, Candace. Come on, Candace.
Miss Dorothy now.
You muted, Candace.
Go ahead, Miss Dorothy.
No, that was, I mean, getting all the email and information and on Facebook, I just wrote down some questions, and that was one of the questions.
What's the next question?
That's it.
Okay.
Because
if you have any more, we'll definitely.
The young lady answered a lot of the questions that I had on my list, and just listening to her talk, my questions got answered.
Reach out. Very powerful. She is the answer. That's why she's going to be mayor.
That's right.
And we're going to start that campaign tonight.
Yes. Call me. I support it.
That's right. Candace.
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed being a part of this, listening to everyone's perspectives. That's kind of what I do anyways. I don't like to talk much, Lisa asked me to be a part of it, so I was like, yeah, sure, I'll be a part of it. Just, when she sent the questions, I started doing my own research, and through that I learned more things about like the Tulsa they've done, and how the United States and the world has gone about doing reparations. So yeah, this was definitely what it was meant to be for me, a learning experience.
Yes.
I'm just grateful to be a part of anything moving forward that helps Elaine move forward.
Exactly.
All right, Aura, can you give us your closing comments on the film and the discussion?
I really liked the film. I learned some new interesting things. I really liked our discussion tonight. I've also learned some things that I didn't know, and I've been made aware of a lot of things, and that just puts more fire up under my feet and let me know that I have to continue to deliver my message to our young Black people. And I just got to get a move on. I got to keep going forward and moving forward because this is a movement. And it's a movement that is going to be big. And in order for us to overcome everything that has been set forth against us, we're going to have to really just start knowledging up, educating ourselves, and just not allowing other people to take our voices and continue to speak our truth and not just speak it, but walk in it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Lisa.
I'm just gonna end because I know Candace and Aura probably saying, because I talk with both of them frequently. Lisa, you didn't mention this about that bill. I know I see your faces like what? Because didn't, because I wanted to get all of the, and first of all, I had to deal with it. When I learned what had happened, I was just livid. I had to deal with, you know, so much could have been going on and happening in Elaine to help the Elaine community, but it's being blocked. And I had to deal with talking with, you know, Dr. Mary Olson, myself, and, you know, making sure she understood that I know what you're doing, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to explain what you're doing, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to fix this. And she has just not responded to me, and that's okay. But I wanted you all to hear it because I wanted you to hear it here and respond here. And that's why, and I didn't want it to be like a gossip or something I'm running around talking about. I wanted to hear it exactly, I mean, right directly from the people who wrote it and who, you know, who work with it, and hear their perspective directly from them. That's why I didn't mention it prior.
Thank you, Lisa. We're going to end.
You want me
with,
to share the screen?
Yes, we're going to share the screen, and we want to end with something that I wrote last night, and I shared it with Lisa. And it's like a affirmation or a decree that I would really like for us to say and or repeat. And I sent it, and I can email it to everyone, and we'll also email, like I said, the SB 591, the bill, to create a committee of reconciliation.
And we can post it also on the Descendants Facebook
right,
page.
we can make sure it's posted there. So let's do that, and we're going to end it with that. And we've been talking, and we've been digging in some heavy trenches tonight. And so let's start with just a deep breath, and let's do 3. And after that, I'm going to say begin, and I want us to say together this affirmation decree.
Okay.
Is that good for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, deep breath.
Yes.
Begin.
I am grateful for the strength and bravery
of my
ancestors. I am proud of their labor of love for their families
and communities.
I am inspired by their organizing power, hope,
and hope for a better life,
future, and
world.
Fear, trauma,
and
pain of the past, and even our present is acknowledged. But it does not control our future. We, the descendants of Elaine Massacre
1919,
and all whose family lived, sharecropped, farmed the lands, and homes of those who sought to enslave and destroy us are free. The blood of our ancestors lives within us, and we will not be silent. Restorative justice and liberation shall be ours right now.
Amen.
Amen.
And so it is.
And so it
it shall be.
And so it shall be.
Deep breath. Thank you, guys. Y'all are amazing.
Yeah.
I'm so really honored to finally meet you, and I'm looking forward to continuing this work past the 101 anniversaries that we kind of get together on, because like Stephen said, we have to continue the conversation. We got to go all the way up to the UN. We're talking about crimes of humanity here, and we have to stand strong and make these things happen so that when Aura runs for mayor, she's not battling, that there will be some things that will be moved out of the way, and people who will be moved out of the way, who do not benefit or does not see what we need to see or what they need to see in our communities. So thank you all so much. Lisa, you want to have the last word?
Unmute yourself.
It's 2 hours until 11 o'clock. It's 2 hours until the beginning of the massacre, September 30th, 1919, at 11 o'clock, approximately 11 o'clock p.m., when the cars drove up to the church in Hoop Spur and start shooting in the church, and the lights went out. I hope you keep us in your thoughts. And remember, we do this for our ancestors. I have my candle burning, and I'll keep it burning until 11 o'clock p.m. when the lights go out and the massacre began 101 years ago.
The altar up also. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Let everybody go out.